Every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday. Tuesday, Casual Tuesday. Wednesday, Casual Hump Day. Thursday, Casual Thurs. That's what we call it. And Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, September 27th, 2019. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live, steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Mehdi Hasan, senior contributor and columnist at The Intercept, host of the Deconstructed podcast there, also a presenter and interviewer on Al Jazeera English. Also on the program today, impeachment heats up. So, of course, Democrats go home on break. However, a majority in Congress now signed on for impeachment. Not a majority of Democrats. A majority of members of the U.S. House of Representatives. Meanwhile, public support for impeachment grows. Can you imagine? Exactly. It's almost like if you build it, they will come. Trump jokes about killing the whistleblower. And no joke, Donald Trump slashes refugees cap from 110,000 in 2016 down to 18,000 refugees we will be allowing in the country. Maximum. Also on the program today, Eugene Scalia confirmed as Labor Secretary. Yeah, that's Scalia. And the insider trading, charter flight taking, corrupt Tom Price drops into the Georgia Senate race. Meanwhile, the bipartisan Cannabis Banking Act held up by Mitch McConnell. Can you imagine? No legislation was supposed to pass, and it's Mitch McConnell that's stopping it. Meanwhile, in New York State, Governor Nixon Cuomo extends the New York registration deadline to February 14th. Thank you, Governor Nixon.
Got to change that Chiron.
Employer-provided health care coverage passes $20,000 a year. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, everybody in here is getting a new car, except for you're not. And mortgage lenders are now pricing in climate change. All this and more
Just
on
sell your
today's
house.
program. Exactly.
Just sell it. Sell it.
Super easy. Oh, and I forgot this one too. It didn't make it into my stack by mistake, but I had read it. Total bedlam at Fox News right now, as you can imagine. But we will get to that. We will get to that later in the program. Let's just start with what happened yesterday. There was a hearing, House Intelligence Committee. There was one in the Senate as well in the Intelligence Committee. However, it was only for, it was closed door. And Joseph McGuire, the acting director of national intelligence, brought to the committee to explain, and this was, they ultimately, before he came in, they released the mock-up of the transcript of the phone call. We know it's not the actual phone call because we know what happened to the actual transcript of the phone call. It was locked away in one of the highest security computer vaults, essentially, that the American government has. Even though this, of course, had very little to do with national security. But they did so because they knew what the president was doing was highly illicit. Joseph McGuire received this whistleblower complaint, which we now know was from someone working within the CIA who had heard in the context of multi-agency discussions all of these things which pointed to the president of the United States leveraging his power to receive from a foreign government a contribution in kind, as we call it. This would be a free gift as to manufactured dirt on someone he anticipated might be his political opponent. McGuire is being asked by Adam Schiff, why didn't you bring us the complaint? And McGuire had two answers. One is, well, I didn't think it was urgent. And that's a statutory obligation to bring it to Congress if it was urgent within 7 days. And he didn't think it was urgent. Fair enough. But then he decided unilaterally, well, there may be executive privilege issues. So even though this is a complaint against the White House, I'm going to see if the White House thinks it's appropriate for me to give it to you.
We went to the White House first to determine, to ask the question.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know is chronology. So you went to the White House first. So you went to the subject of the complaint for advice first about whether you should provide the complaint to Congress.
There were issues within this, a couple of things. One, it did appear that it has executive privilege. If it does have executive privilege, it is the White House that determines that.
Pause it. Now, I should say, throughout this entire situation, McGuire says, like, I'm not a lawyer. He can apparently the only thing that this guy knows about the law is that it appeared to have executive privilege.
It is the White House that determines that. I cannot determine that as the Director of National Intelligence.
But in this case, the White House, the president is the subject of the complaint. He's the subject of the wrongdoing. Were you aware when you went to the White House for advice about whether evidence of wrongdoing by the White House should be provided to the Congress, were you aware that the White House counsel has taken the unprecedented position that the privilege applies to communications involving the president, when he was president, involving the president when he wasn't president, involving people who never served in the administration, involving people who never served in the administration even when they're not even talking to the president? Were you aware that that is the...
What happened? Something froze. Well, he goes on to basically, he's making the argument here, just pop it back up and continue to play here. He's making the argument to McGuire, like, when you brought this over there, were you aware of the fact that they have deemed that just about everything is executive privilege? Even when he was not the chief executive? Even when he was just a private citizen?
President, involving the president, when he was president, involving the president when he wasn't president, involving people who never served in the administration, involving people who never served in the administration even when they're not even talking to the president. Were you aware that that is the unprecedented position of the White House you went to for advice about whether you should turn over a complaint involving the White House?
Mr. Chairman, as I said in my opening statement, I believe that everything here in this matter is totally unprecedented. And that is why my former directors of national intelligence forwarded them to you whether or not it met urgent concern or whether it was serious. This was different. And to me, it just seemed prudent to be able to check and ensure as a member of the executive branch before I sent it forward.
All right. My sense after watching all of this is that Joseph McGuire is a guy deeply, deeply in over his head. And he didn't know what to do. Now, this is a guy who has had, if you're into that type of thing, a stellar career in the military and special ops over many, many years, who I think has a sincere belief in public service in the way that he has gone about it. I think he has integrity in that respect. But here's a guy who was a deer in the headlights when he got hold of this. And if anything, what this speaks to is a problem in our culture. Because if your first instinct when you're panicking, when you get the whistleblower complaint about the president of the United States, is to think, I've got to give the president of the United States an opportunity to protect himself and involved with executive privilege here, as opposed to, I should give this to Congress because this is the Inspector General who I respect and think has done their job in a fair and competent way, says this is red alert. then you go with the process. I mean, he spent a lot of time saying, I took 11 oaths to the office under the Constitution. Well, in this instance, then you go with the process. You don't freelance and say, hey, I'm not qualified to make any decision other than the White House might want to call this executive privilege. Now, maybe had they done that, he would have leaked it in some other way, or I don't know. But working through this on those hearings is exactly what we should see day in, day out over the coming months. I don't know that we will, and I have a feeling that Mehdi might have something to say about that in a moment. Before we take a break, I want to tell you support today for today's show comes from Mova Globes. Heard me talk about these. I have it right here. Maybe sometimes you've noticed lately. I'm over there playing with the globe a little bit. These things turn all on their own. They with or without a base. In my instance, I have a little plexiglass base. You can put them in any setting. They do great in any type of lighting situation. No batteries are needed. There's no cords or anything like that. Hidden magnets provide the movement. They have 40 different designs, which includes like world maps, historical world maps, outer space. They have some famous artwork globes, something for everyone here. The Outer Space Collection even has a graphic that's provided by NASA. I think they also have a globe, too, that looks like the Earth from space.
That's extremely cool.
But they also have like Pluto. They got Uranus. I got a 6-year-old kid, so whenever I bring up Uranus,
no, that
now,
holds
it's
up.
ridiculous.
That's still funny.
It's still funny.
Yeah. Don't pretend you've matured out of that.
No, I haven't, but I generally do pretend. They got one that traces the voyages of Captain James Cook. 3 different voyages all around the world. They got other vintage maps. And when you go back, you see, like, it's fascinating to see, like, oh, there was no Antarctica when James Cook went around the planet. You know, that thing. They have Van Gogh. They have Monet artworks. There's one of Mars, which is pretty cool.
I can plan out my communist space colony.
You could. Like I say, these are awesome as gifts, awesome to have around the house, awesome to have on your podcast desk. And even if your son is telling you it's time to bring it home, you can visit www.movaglobes.com/majority. Use the code majority for 10% off your purchase. That's movaglobes.com/majority. Use the code majority for 10% off your purchases. Quick break. When we come back, Mehdi Hasan. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the program senior contributor and columnist at The Intercept, host of their Deconstructed podcast, also a presenter and interviewer on Al Jazeera English. In fact, you just had Julian Castro on, and I guess you didn't necessarily plan to talk about impeachment, probably when you booked him. But Mehdi, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
So let's and you wrote a piece in The Intercept, which I think captures my frustration at this moment. But before we get there, because it appears that after the first hearing yesterday, which I think one could argue would be what should be a series of testimony, I should say, regarding impeachment, regarding the whole Ukrainian question. It sounds like Nancy Pelosi is still going to have Congress take a vacation for 2 weeks.
You know how important vacations are for politicians, Sam. It's very important, even in the middle of the biggest political crisis of 2019. Sorry, go on.
No, please go.
No, I was going to say, look, I'm torn on this. On the one hand, obviously, I'm not going to come here and defend people taking vacations in the middle of as fascists and racists take over the country. On the other hand, I am slightly worried about the reports coming out this week. This is why I wrote the Intercept column about the idea that they want to get this all done and dusted quickly so they can get back to, I don't know what, infrastructure week. They want to get this impeachment vote done. They want to narrow it down to Trump's dealings on Ukraine and Biden. They want to get it on the floor, vote it, and send it over to the Senate. And that's a problem for me because I think you only get one shot at impeachment, and that one shot needs to cover everything Trump's done that's impeachable, which is a lot of stuff, Sam.
Well, I am so baffled by this. I understand it insofar as Pelosi did not want to do this. I think it was, and Ryan Grimm over at The Intercept wrote a piece that showed sort of that the long journey to this impeachment. And largely it seems that a lot of those frontline Democrats, when they went home in August, heard from their constituents, like, you got to impeach this guy. And this, of course, was before the Ukraine stuff.
Remember what they were saying? Nobody wants impeachment. The public doesn't want impeachment. Well, number one, your base wants impeachment. And why is it only the Republican Party cares about what their base wants? Why does the Democratic Party never care what its base wants? And now you're looking at the polls that are out this week in the first 48 hours after the transcript has come out of the phone call, the whistleblower complaint. You're seeing the polling already shifting. Already. So, those of us who said public opinion will move as leadership is shown, I think we've already been vindicated in the space of 48 hours. I think over the space of the next 3 to 6 months, we'll be vindicated further.
And I would say this, that not only has the polling moved by 7 points, but there was Business Insider had a poll that shows that not only do people, we have 43% now saying that he should be impeached, but when you look at this polling, 38% think an inquiry is the right thing to do and will help Democrats electorally. 19% think an inquiry is the right thing to do, but will hurt Democrats electorally. So even though those numbers only 43%
that's a good point.
should be done, a lot of that hesitation is a sort of like the American voters, pundit saying like, I don't think this is going to be good politically.
Which is one of the biggest problems we have in politics right now, especially on the left and the center left, is every voter thinks that they are some sort of pundit or pollster or, player in the game. So, for example, if you look at the presidential primaries right now, you ask people, who do you think should be the candidate? Joe Biden. Is it because you love Joe Biden? Nope. It's because I think Joe Biden is the person who's going to beat Donald Trump. Well, you don't know that. You're just going with the crowd and you're going with conventional wisdom, which is very much wrong in this case, I would argue. Similarly on impeachment, do you want to impeach Trump? Of course. If he's not worthy of impeachment, who is? But why aren't you backing it? Oh, well, I think it will hurt Democrats come next year because the Senate will never vote for it. So there's all this conventional wisdom doing the rounds, which a lot of Democratic voters have wrongly imbibed, in my view. I think they're wrong about Biden. I think he's the candidate who is most likely to deliver a Trump second term. And I think they're wrong about impeachment. We forget so quickly that Bill Clinton was impeached. He was not removed from office. And yet the Republicans won the White House in 2000, less than 2 years later.
Right. And I want to interrogate just a little bit more, because I think what it is, and look, I saw this after 8 years of Reagan Bush, the sort of the fear and exhaustion that Democrats had, and they were, the huge sigh of relief when Clinton got in. I saw this after George W. Bush, at least in 2004, where there was this sort of like notion we got to go with some type of safe choice. There is a fear. I think it's a legitimate fear that Donald Trump will win re-election, that the Democratic leadership fails, it seems to me, to project any type of strength or confidence in any situation, and that sends a cue to the voters as well.
Exactly. I think you're right about the cues. And, as I wrote in my Intercept column yesterday, I quoted the famous Israeli foreign minister on, his put down of the Palestinians at the UN, that the Democrats never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. This is a huge opportunity now, the chance to impeach a president with a legitimate cause, not the kind of spurious impeachment that the Republicans did against Bill Clinton, but a very legitimate impeachment, which even, some Republicans, a tiny handful of Republicans, like Justin Amash, who is a Republican, even though he's left the party, have said there's a very clear case for impeaching him over Mueller. 1,000 former federal prosecutors, including many who served under Bush and Reagan, have come out and said, yes, impeach him over obstruction of justice. And I think you'll see more, starting to peel away. Not many, but you'll see some. And that's a problem when the Democrats themselves don't want to show that leadership. I think there was somebody made a gag earlier this week. William Weld, former Republican governor of Massachusetts, who's running against Trump in the primaries, if the Republicans even allow primaries. Right. He's trying to challenge Trump. He said Trump should be executed for treason, which is, I think, ridiculously over the top. But isn't it ironic that a Republican guy is calling for the execution of Trump, while Nancy Pelosi, up until Tuesday, 4 o'clock, didn't even want to impeach the guy?
And now, so now she doesn't want to impeach him, but then she makes the decision, all right, we have to go through it. What is the rationale that if we do this really quickly, I don't understand what the theory is here. Like, I can understand, I don't agree with it, but I can understand why she was afraid of it. But it's what's the argument? Well, we impeached him, but we did it really quick. I don't get.
I'll be honest, I don't understand the theory either, because I was having a conversation with a colleague who was reading my piece and who said, well, what do you want? What's wrong with just getting him? It's a slam dunk. Do Ukraine, be done with it. You win the vote. The public are on board. And I said, well, you have to take a step back and ask, what is the point of impeachment? Exactly. For me, there's only two purposes to impeachment. Number one, to morally draw a line in the sand and say, this is wrong for the sake of history. With one eye on history, you say that we did not sit silently while this neo-fascist abused children at the border and obstructed justice on a daily basis and enriched himself at the US taxpayers' expense and involved himself in campaign finance crimes in front of our eyes. All of the many impeachable offenses that he's done. We didn't sit quietly. We drew a line in the sand. We impeached him in the House of Representatives. That's one argument. The other argument is the political argument, which is actually it will hurt Trump. The idea that it won't hurt Trump, the idea that Trump wants to go into the next election, having been one of only 3 men in human history to be impeached by the House of Representatives, is absurd. There's no scenario in which the most thin-skinned, narcissistic, egomaniacal, megalomaniacal individual in the United States of America right now, who's obsessed with comparing himself to Abraham Lincoln and Ronald Reagan and others, is going to be okay about being impeached, or that won't harm him. And the idea that Nancy Pelosi says we get this done in a rush, that doesn't deal with the moral question of why you're leaving out all these other crimes, high crimes and misdemeanors he's committed. And it doesn't deal with the political question, which is if you get this done by November, then what? What, you've got a party to go to? You've got hair to wash? What is the rush? You're going to get back to legislating? Nancy Pelosi knows better than you and I do, Sam, that her bills are stuck in the Senate. The same Senate that's going to vote down impeachment is also not passing any of her bills.
Yeah, I would add actually a 2-A to the political calculation you're making, because once you force a vote on impeachment, it's basically everybody is declared. I'm either protecting Donald Trump or I'm out to hold him to account. And that is something that the Democrats have always had trouble doing, is nationalizing congressional races and senatorial races. And this seems to me to be a perfect way to nationalize all these races. You go in, it's very quite simple. This guy voted to protect Donald Trump, and you choose voter.
It's simple for you and I, Sam, and it's simple for a lot of voters. It's not simple for a lot of the Democratic political elites. That's the reality. The reality is that you have senators like Dianne Feinstein saying, well, do I want to lose Susan Collins from the Senate? She's literally said that openly, on the record. An absurd statement to make for Senator Susan Collins, who, thanks to her, Brett Kavanaugh is on the Supreme Court. You have Joe Biden. Recent reporting has revealed that Joe Biden said to Mitch McConnell, we hope to see you back, Mitch. We want to see you get... he said that, Biden. So when you have leading members of the Democratic Party saying, you know what, we're kind of okay with our Republican colleagues. We dine together. We go to the gym together. We're pals. When you have Kamala Harris even standing on the debate stage the other day referring to, quote, the late, great John McCain, which I think is an absurd statement to make about a former Republican presidential candidate who for his entire life until that healthcare vote voted against Democratic Party interests again and again and again. When you have that kind of mindset at the top of the party, yeah, it sounds easy in theory for you and I to say it's obvious this is the political move to make. But Democrats don't like wielding power. And they don't like, as you say, nationalizing races and really kind of putting their opponents under pressure. That's why we're not seeing an across-the-board impeachment. That's why up until Tuesday, 4 p.m., Nancy Pelosi, the most she had ever done, to take on Trump and censure him for his ridiculous conduct was, some strongly worded tweets and some threats from a podium, but not actually any kind of censure on the floor of a body that she controls.
Have you run into anybody yourself or anybody who's done any reporting that has at least articulated a strategy of impeaching quickly? Like it just seems to me that like once you've impeached, you're going to pay the price. You might as well, if you think that's the idea, like you're going to pay a price, you might as well get something out of it. I mean, do they think that it will, like, if they impeach and it's not like it doesn't go to April or something, that somehow it's going to demotivate Republican voters? I don't quite get it. I think we just lost him. Mehdi, you there? Well, bear with us, folks. No, we'll just. Hi, Mehdi. We're on the air. Are you there? Hello? Mehdi? All right, folks, give us a second. We'll be right back. All right, we lost you for a moment. I was asking if you had heard anybody firsthand, or if you'd heard anybody who reported, has been reporting on this, as to like the what is the theory though, that like if we get impeachment over quickly, the pain that we will feel from impeachment will go away, even if we vote to impeach him? Like, I don't understand what even the theory is.
I don't think they've thought that far ahead. I think they've just thought about internal party unity. But my understanding is that there are these kind of frontline Democrats. There are these Democrats in swing seats who won Republican seats in 2018 who have always been nervous about impeachment. And this is the only issue that will get them on board, because it's a national security issue. It's an international issue. The Democrats love to get behind national security consensuses. And this is seen as Trump, undermining American national security and foreign policy. And therefore, this is the issue that they'll come on board for. They won't come on board for, naked corruption or campaign finance violations or blatant obstruction of justice, 10 cases laid out in the Mueller report. But for this, they will. And it's for the sake of party unity that Nancy Pelosi will get behind and do this vote. It's clean. It's easy. It's a unique issue. They think it's easily understandable, by the way. Steny Hoyer said on the record, this is easy to understand. Debbie Dingell from Michigan, Pelosi ally in the leadership, has said, this is easy to understand, which I find, A, kind of patronizing. The idea that, voters only understand this, and they don't understand, hush money paid to Stormy Daniels. They don't understand Trump enriching himself at the taxpayer's expense. I think that's far easier to understand. And also this idea that, the story itself is that easy to understand. I would argue, yes, in the big picture, yes. But once the Republicans start, throwing crap against the wall in terms of Hunter Biden, it's going to muddy the water. People at home who don't follow this stuff closely, I worry that they will hear, Democrats saying this about Trump and the president. They'll hear Republicans talking about Hunter Biden and the prosecutor, and they might both sides it, which is a slight worry. I mean, it's a small worry. I don't think it's that big a worry, but it's weird to say we can't impeach him on other issues because they're more complicated. How is it complicated to say that Trump obstructed justice? How is it complicated to say that the vice president of the United States just spent $600,000 of taxpayers' money on limos driving from Trump's golf course in Ireland, where he decided to stay, instead of the capital of the country?
Well, and we also now have reports that Richard Neal, the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, has been sitting on another whistleblower report from, we don't know exactly whom, but someone probably in the IRS, that Donald Trump has been interfering with the IRS audit of his taxes, or something to that effect. I mean, we don't know exactly. Neal is also the guy, I'll remind people, that refused essentially to get Donald Trump's taxes from New York State, who had voted a law to basically provide it for him. And why wouldn't you say, like, wait a second, before we exhaust impeachment, because we can't impeach him twice, that's never going to happen, shouldn't we also, like, hear from this whistleblower? And I am just... I mean, for the life of me, I don't even understand what these frontline Democrats, why they think they can impeach in November and people are going to forget 8 months later or something. And you know, I understand the idea for party unity and that maybe the entire party, 230 people, have to move somewhere because of the 7 that they're talking about. But if Donald Trump realizes that, like, hey, I got impeached and nothing happened, what does he do then?
He also has like a year. If you get done and dusted with this in November, just from a pure political point of view, you give him a year to rewrite the narrative and talk his nonsense, as he has done post-Mueller. The idea that you wouldn't keep him on the defensive, you wouldn't be demanding documents, you wouldn't be subpoenaing witnesses, you wouldn't be holding televised hearings, it's absurd. I mean, the damage that was done to Nixon was over the course of a year in the early 70s, between the Senate Watergate Committee setting up and between the House Judiciary Committee drafting articles of impeachment. By the way, just on a historical point, a lot of people aren't aware of this. There were 3 articles of impeachment against Richard Nixon, which were passed. There were 2 others that didn't pass. One of them was related to the bombing of Cambodia. So yes, the House Democrats at the time did decide to bring in other things other than Watergate into that impeachment hearings. And their articles of impeachment themselves were pretty detailed and lengthy. In terms of Andrew Johnson, the first president to ever be impeached, 11 articles of impeachment were brought against him by the House of Representatives. The idea that you have to keep this clean and narrow is ahistorical. We haven't done this very often. The United States has not done impeachment very often, and when they have, it hasn't been in this way. So there's not exactly precedent for what Pelosi and co are doing. And I just think it's madness to the Congress has these powers. Why are you unilaterally disarming? And remember, Nancy Pelosi, Sam, was the one telling us until very recently he wants to be impeached, which I think is the most ridiculous conspiracy theory of our time. He's goading us into impeaching him, she said at a public event a few months ago. The idea that Donald Trump wants to be impeached was absurd then. It's definitely absurd now when you look at his Twitter feed and see how he's losing it.
Well, you can also see that they have basically sent out an army of about 30 lawyers to challenge everything in the courts and tie it all up. She also said at one point on national television that if we impeach him, then he can't be indicted when he leaves office, which is categorically, not only categorically untrue, I think like literally in the impeachment, I can't remember what article it is in the Constitution, but it says literally that you can be.
And Robert Mueller has said that. Don't forget, by the way, Robert Mueller, let's go back to this Ukraine court. Robert Mueller said on the 24th of July in Congress that he could be indicted after he's left office.
Yep.
That night, that evening, the Democrats took no steps to turn Mueller's testimony into any kind of censure or impeachment articles. The very next day, the 25th of July, Donald Trump, who thinks, hey, nothing can happen to me, even after Mueller testifies, makes the call to the Ukrainians.
Right. And, you know, I also find it hard to believe that if he's willing to do this with Ukraine, why would anyone assume like this is his one little weakness? He likes to leverage the government to benefit himself, but only with Ukraine. With everybody else, he's absolutely by the book. That's the one thing about.
Well, as we now know about this, the latest stuff is the power of just calling for impeachment. We've seen documents handed over. We've seen evidence now, not just of the abuse of power, but the cover-up, this idea that they had taken this transcript and put it in a place where you're not supposed to put it with highly sensitive intelligence material, which a lot of legal experts are saying is evidence of a cover-up, of a concealment, of breaking the law. So yeah, if he's done it for this one call, you're telling me there's not dozens of other transcripts of dozens of other calls knocking about? How are you going to get them if you rush through impeachment by November? These things take time. Go get the documents, do the digging. The Republicans had no story in Benghazi, and yet they went on for years, holding hearings, costing the taxpayers millions of dollars, investigating again and again. After 8 investigations, they still set up the House Benghazi Committee to go after Hillary Clinton. And they never found any dirt on her, but they did some serious damage to her reputation ahead of a presidential campaign.
Well, I think
in this case, you could actually damage Trump's reputation and find actual dirt.
It was the 6th, I think, investigation of Benghazi where they came up with the email server, frankly.
Indeed.
And so,
Indeed.
All right. Well, let me ask you just, I know we don't have too much time left here, but let me just ask you a couple of specifics here. Bill Barr, this complaint went to the Department of Justice, the OLC, and they decided no, there's nothing, there's no there, and dismissed it out of hand. It seems to me that Bill Barr, in addition to everybody who basically conspired to take this call and immediately bury it in the most sensitive, essentially safe that the U.S. government has, are involved in a cover-up. I mean, to what extent do you think that the Democrats should be bringing in Bill Barr, or at least, this is a problem.
Yeah. And this is the Bill Barr who, when he was appointed, a lot of sensible people did point out that he was going to be Donald Trump's Roy Cohn, this personal corrupt lawyer that Donald Trump had employed in the 80s. He's always wanted his own Roy Cohn, and he didn't think Jeff Sessions was that person. He finally got that person in Bill Barr. And yeah, we've seen it in the Mueller report in terms of the way he kind of spun that and misled people around the Mueller report. We've seen that in terms of, by the way, his testimony in Congress, where he dodged the question about whether he'd opened investigations into anyone on Trump's request. We now know from the phone call summary, it's not a transcript, that he was asked to do so by the president. The New York Times, Michelle Goldberg did an op-ed today, which is headlined "Just How Corrupt is Bill Barr?" And the answer is very, very, very corrupt. And the Democrats need to be shouting this from the rooftops, that the DOJ is no longer independent if it ever was, and the Attorney General is corrupt, and he should be impeached as well. At the very minimum, he should be demanded to recuse himself from this. The idea that the whistleblower goes to the Inspector General of the intelligence community and says, hey, I've got a complaint about Donald Trump having improper conversations with the foreign governments, which involve the Attorney General, and then the DOJ, led by the Attorney General, says, yeah, we're not allowing you to send this complaint to Congress. I mean, how is that not a massive conflict? How can anyone, even the most loyal right-wing Republican, with a straight face, justify that?
And people should understand, I mean, the moment that Bill Barr came out and basically did his version of Ilhan Omar and the squad should go back to where they came from, and he followed that up in a much more sort of, I guess, dignified manner in which he articulated it. People need to understand that leaving Bill Barr unscathed is highly problematic, because if you're one of those people who think that Donald Trump may not be so easily quick to leave office, even if he loses, it's all going to be a function of whether Bill Barr ties it up. And if Bill Barr is left, his reputation is continued to be unsullied, and there's no attempt to sort of dig into what this guy's been doing as a Roy Cohn for Trump. I think it's going to be highly problematic. All right, let me ask you another question.
But just very quickly on Barr, people aren't aware of this. This is not his first rodeo.
Right.
He served under George H.W. Bush and helped him cover up Iran-Contra and hand out a bunch of pardons to people who were going to basically implicate George H.W. Bush in the Iran-Contra affair. So he's done this before. He's been covering up stuff in Washington, D.C. for decades.
What is going on with Volker? What do you know about Kurt Volker? I mean, Kurt Volker is the guy that, was the ambassador to Ukraine. He is the guy who Giuliani seems to be trying to argue somehow it's exculpatory for him that he was invited to go by the State Department to deal with Ukraine. It sort of begs the question, is like, why is the State Department doing this? But Volker apparently is unpaid. Were you aware that he is like a liaison there who is apparently unpaid, he's just a guy who apparently is doing the U.S. State Department a favor.
I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me, Sam, because all of these figures in all of these circles, I mean, what are they doing there? Volker, Giuliani. I mean, the Rudy Giuliani story might go down as one of the most amazing stories of this presidency in terms of is his big mouth and erratic behavior and brazen lying regularly on live TV. Is that what's going to screw over Trump in the long run? Every time he opens his mouth, it seems like he does some kind of damage. But I know there's a theory circulating in some circles that they want him out there distracting and taking hits, but I'm not sure I buy that because he's so unpredictable and so unhinged. This guy was once mayor of New York and seen as a serious Republican presidential candidate. And I think all of these people in Trump's orbit, all of these people floating around Ukraine, they all need to be investigated. They all need to be put on the record. I think Chris Hayes tweeted that last night. Get all these people, subpoena them, put them under oath, ask them these questions. That takes time. I hope they have the time to do that. As you said just now, the 6th Benghazi hearing found the email server. Who knows what you're going to find when you start? Most of us didn't know who Kurt Volker even existed until 24, 36 hours ago. So how many other people are out there who we don't know exist? But we know that, Trump employs all sorts of people. Trump's fixers employ all sorts of people. Now we know the State Department, Mike Pompeo, is involved in all this. I can't even follow, to be honest. I'll tell you listeners clearly, I can't even follow all the links here. It's so ridiculous. I mean, I saw Giuliani posting a text from the State Department today in part of his ongoing row with the State Department about what his role was. This all has to be investigated and it has to be taken seriously. But my worry is that, there's a rush. We even miss things on Ukraine. Best case scenario, you get impeachment on Ukraine and you say, okay, we impeach the president. Worst case scenario, you F up the entire Ukraine thing because the Democrats tend to F things up. I would like to see something more than both that best case and worst case scenario. As I say, I go back to the beginning of our conversation. I would like to see Trump held to account and impeached for torturing children at the border, for being involved with Michael Cohen in paying illegal hush money to Stormy Daniels on the eve of the election, which helped him get elected, for obstructing justice on 10 different occasions, as the Mueller report pointed out, for illegally trying to divert aid from Puerto Rico, where 3,000 Americans died, and diverting it to Texas and Louisiana. That's impeachable. For threatening to use the U.S. government to go after Amazon and the Washington Post. That's impeachable. I would like to see those things held up. There's no reason the Democrats can't do all of this. I don't buy that they can't do all of this. Of course they can.
I agree with you. Mehdi Hasan, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sam.
All right, folks. There you go. Contact your Congress people. I mean, this is actually, we've talked about, I've cited Ryan Grimm's reporting quite a bit over the past week. But the fact of the matter is, the reason why impeachment happened, it's hard to make a counterfactual. But even in the absence of this Ukraine stuff, we were moving towards impeachment because these frontline Democrats had heard when they went back from their constituents, you got to do this. And they made the calculation that if we don't do it, I'm going to lose these people. They're going to be depressed, essentially. And their morale is going to be low. And they're not going to come out. They're not going to campaign for me. Because the people who show up at the town halls, those are the people you need. The Democrats who show up at your town hall, if you're a Democrat, you need those people not just to say, like, I'm going to vote for you. You need those people to phone bank for you, to get their friends to vote for you, to get their friends to come out and vote, to get their friends to come out and vote. You need those people. And when they show up at a town hall and say, not only am I not, like, I'm mad at you, it has an impact. And so you need to get out there. This is why primaries are effective, even if you like your congressperson. This is why being active is helpful. This is one of those moments where you contact your congressperson and you tell them to demand that Nancy Pelosi has a full and thorough investigation, hold Donald Trump to account, not only on Ukraine, but on everything else. And not only hold Donald Trump to account, Bill Barr, Mike Pompeo, Rudy Giuliani, and that's, 4 asks. a thorough and complete investigation, one that it goes beyond Ukraine and includes Giuliani, Pompeo, and Bill Barr. Because again, it's going to be Bill Barr who the newscasters on November 9th, after Donald Trump loses the election, God willing, who comes out and says, well, there's been discrepancies and we are filing a motion to the Supreme Court to enjoin the announcement of the, this is how it's going to go down.
It's definitely going to happen. And this is also somebody who is just, I guess I shouldn't put words in his mouth, but this is the famous Nixon line that everybody grew up with is like, this is not how it's supposed to be, where it's like, if the president does it, it's not illegal. In
Right.
the Frost-Nixon interviews. That's what Bill Barr thinks. Clearly, even beyond Trump.
I think
this is
true.
Pure Dick Cheney unitary executive combined with being a consigliere for a lunatic criminal.
And if Bill Barr's involvement in things like this is not described to the public, if the public does not have any education on who Bill Barr is, and they just think, oh, he's the attorney general, not he's the attorney general who quashed this whistleblower complaint, not he's the attorney general who mischaracterized the Mueller report. If they don't see him as the partisan hack that he is, it's going to be that much harder to disregard what Bill Barr is saying on the day that he decides, like, well, Donald Trump won the election.
Right. Exactly. I want it to be broader in scope for both normative and strategic reasons, but it's just for all the reasons you're outlining. Like, you need to delegitimize all of them because they're all legitimate.
Yeah,
it's not like an extra job you have to do. You just literally need to expose the guy who is clearly willing to do anything.
It really is inexplicable to me this is what I think is problematic about the Democratic leadership in my estimation. It's not that there is, it's not a disagreement in strategy. It's that they don't seem to have one. There's no articulation of a strategy. Like, there's this vague sort of attempt to have a tactic. Well, if you're going to force us to do impeachment, then we've got to make it as quick as possible. And I guess, I just,
why?
I'm trying to.
For a fact, honestly, like, let's game this out. It's going to fail in the Senate. So the first argument, which is just true, is that
it's not. It's quite
never
possibly.
pass.
It may not even get to.
It may
the
not
Senate.
even get to the Senate. So why not you take the whole months if you're going to do it? You made the decision. You took the decision. Dine out on it for months. Every day a new embarrassment. Every day a new request. Every day a new humiliation. Every day a new fine. Every day a new threat.
Yep.
I don't understand. It's like I'm gonna hit a forehand and approach the net. I'm gonna stop at midcourt.
Right. Exactly. That is. Yeah. People who play tennis. You're in no man's land. In other words, folks. That is like, once you decide to cross the street, you better have a little pep to your step because you don't want to get hit by a truck.
Yeah, no half measures.
And it's just stunning. And so they're going to go on vacation. If you have the opportunity, drop by and make this a one of those like learning educate. They're going on vacation? You make it one of those like
learning annex.
Learning vacations. What do you call those?
Educational trips? I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking.
You bring them over, Glove.
Exactly.
And you tell them to learn.
Honestly, it's just it's like there's some type of competition between Pelosi and Schumer. We're like, well, let me see if I can't do something that makes less sense.
Well, how about this? You're doing impeachment hearings. I'm demanding an investigation of the coupon industry.
Exactly. The irony is, of course, that Mitch McConnell's been holding up this cannabis bill I'll talk about it in the context of this, because the other argument is that, like, well, we need to show the American public that we're getting their work done, which, of course, they passed all these bills in the first 6 months of a Democratic House, and nobody knows it. I can tell you right now, I do this professionally, and I can't tell you more than 4 or 5 of the bills.
I have a question about that. Why can't the DNC put out an expenditure and lay out some consulting contracts, which they love to do, to just do like PSAs? Like, this is what your Democratic House has done in the last year. We passed this bill on voting rights. We passed this bill on this. We passed this bill on that, and do some national or targeted ads.
Yeah, buy some ads on lefty YouTube shows. I mean, honestly, like,
but yeah, actually, that too.
Right.
That too. Why not?
They don't do it because I think on some level they realize, like, nobody really cares. And I imagine what it is it's an opportunity for all of the incumbents to go into the election saying, I voted for blankety blank. I voted for blankety blank. My opponent disagrees against it. I mean, they're so afraid of nationalizing the election that I think that's why they don't even bring that up, because they want their members to be able to pick and choose which ones they emphasize.
Some guy in me just like, excuse me, there's some of the members of the caucus who voted for more pathogens in the food.
So on Wednesday, 2 days ago, the House passed, and I think there was something like, I don't know, 90 Democrats, Republicans even, joined the Democrats to pass a bill that would allow legalized marijuana businesses to have access to banking services. People may not be aware of this, but I don't know how many states we now have with legal marijuana. A dozen, half a dozen. It's become rather uncontroversial, except for New York for some ungodly reason. It was 91 Republicans, 229 Democrats. Including now, if you go to a marijuana dispensary in a state where it is totally legal to buy marijuana, they take your money, and they only could do it in one of 2 ways. One, they can take it as cash, and they have massive stores of cash in these facilities. Or what I understand they do in a place like Las Vegas is they actually sell gift cards. And so when you go up with your credit card, you buy a gift card, and then they use the gift card to redeem to get your pot. And they do this because the banking system will not take and allow for credit or do any credit card transactions if you are involved in selling marijuana because of federal law. And so they have not had access to banking. So what it does, it creates a little bit of a problem, right? There's a lot of cash there. It's rather inefficient. And you have 229 Democrats, 91 Republicans on Wednesday voted for this cannabis banking bill. And it took months to get Republican support. Months. And I think there's 2 things that you can learn from this. One is that obviously the stuff, pot has no longer, it's lost all of its salience as a cultural issue for conservatives in this country. And 2, that if impeachment is having any impact on the ability of lawmakers to make law, it is helping. Because everybody, I think, is scrambling to be like, I want to be doing something if I'm a Republican. Now, I don't know. Mitch McConnell may be holding it up. But the idea that somehow you cannot, you've got more laws passed. You got your first bipartisan bill. And it came after impeachment was announced. It just makes no sense whatsoever to me. It makes no sense. The thinking here, articulate an idea, but they're not doing it. All right. Oh, shoot. Folks, the AM Quickie is live. It's live on its own feed. We were supposed to do this at the beginning of the show. So there's two things that we're going to talk about. First is, if you go to amquickie.com, can we put this up on the amquickie.com? We put it up as a chyron. amquickie.com will redirect. It will redirect to our Fans FM AM Quickie. There it is. You can subscribe with your on iTunes, your Mac, your PC. You can subscribe with your podcast app on your iPhone, or you can copy and paste that feed into your podcast app. Let's say it's Overcast or Pocket Casts or Pocket Pods or Pod Pockets, whatever you do it on.
Pod Pockets is good. Someone should run with that.
It will be on Stitcher within a couple of days, but go sign up for this right now. We will keep it on the feed for another couple of days on both the members and the non-members feed, but then it will live on its own. The AM Quickie, and for, when impeachment starts going up, even if it lasts for like a week, you're going to want to, we're going to try and do our best to give you just like, the quick top line story. So you have a vague notion of what is going down. And by vague, I mean probably more of a notion of what's going down than the vast majority of people you walk around with. But from my perspective, it's vague. We do a 3-hour show every day, 2.5-hour show. But it is just, and we're getting it out earlier and earlier every day. AM Quickie, we got the first one is up there, right there. And we try and put links in there too for all the stories that we do. And so check it out, the AM Quickie. Tell your friends about it. And boom. All right. Yeah. Looks good, right? That's a nice looking
pretty
logo.
little logo there.
I like it. The AM Quickie, ladies and gentlemen. Also, I had promised today we would be doing a little bit of a rundown on Steven Crowder. I've been teasing this for some time, that Steven Crowder, in 2 separate occasions, has literally ended his participation in a forum to avoid debating with me. But it's easy for me to come here and say this. But on Wednesday of next week, because I will be gone for the Rosh Hashanah, on Wednesday of next week, I will show you. I won't just say it. I will show you. So, Stephen, enjoy your weekend. Enjoy Rosh Hashanah. It's a new year. As they say on Rosh Hashanah, it is written. On Yom Kippur, it is sealed. And so during this period of time, I will forgive you. That is what I will do. I will forgive you during that period.
You give him the chance to atone. That's what it's all about, right?
Exactly. And so we will do that next week. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking quite a bit about the hearing yesterday. We'll talk a little bit more about impeachment. We've got some other stuff here too, as well, of course. See you. Oh, wait. What am I talking about? Don't forget, you can support the show by becoming a member at majority.fm. I'm completely sleep deprived, I think. Yes. The impeachment stuff has got me going quite a bit. You can support this program by going to jointhemajorityreport.com, jointhemajorityreport.com. Check it out. Just pennies a day. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code MAJORITY and get 10% off. Don't forget to sign up for the AM Quickie. And also, today is Friday, which means that Tuesday must have happened already. It happened. But take your foot off.
Oh, sorry, guys. I'm really tired. Michaela Milk. I'm
Michaela
becoming
Milk.
you. Michaela Wilkes is running for Congress against Steny Hoyer. She's really great. We talked to her. Then we had an incredibly fun time with Mike Racine, including reminding everybody about the Jeffrey Epstein story. So patreon.com/TMBS, Michael Brooks Show on YouTube. Get your tickets to the Philly Live show. And really quick, October 6th, I'm going to MC an event called Comedy for All, a socialist social with Lauren Ashcroft, who is running for Congress and is a DSA person and a stand-up comedian. So she's actually going to give her stump and tell some jokes. And that is at Catch Astoria. So check out the event and let's try to...
Where is it at?
Catch Astoria. It's in Astoria.
Catch Astoria?
Katch Astoria.
Oh, okay.
And
we used to have a club called Catch a Rising Star.
Yeah, that's
and
Manhattan,
people just
right?
refer to it as Catch.
And
sometimes we Catch Manhattan, but Catch Astoria does not sound like that.
Catch Astoria. Primaries are good, and primaries by legit leftists who are also funny are even better. So see you there, and see you in Philly.
Keep that in mind, Chuck Schumer.
There you go.
Jamie.
This week on the Antifada, we speak with Novara Media's Aaron Bastani about his great new book, Fully Automated Luxury Communism, interrogate exactly what he means by that, and go through some of the critiques that have been leveled as well. Also out today, we have a bonus for our patrons edited together from Andy's appearance on our friend Corey Pine's podcast, News from Nowhere. They talk about Tom DeLonge's To the Stars Academy and what's up with that. The Navy's admission that the videos of UFOs are in fact real. And then they discuss Posadism. Corey interviews Andy a little bit about this wacky ideology that Andy's writing a book about. And they finish it out with an essay on Blink-182's song, Aliens Exist. So check it out, folks.
There you go.
Oh, also our live show is still October 12th at Littlefield, NYC. Get your tickets.
We got a link at majority.fm.
Indeed.
October 12th. My whole social calendar is getting filled up now. Look at that. Matt is off somewhere. I don't know where he is. Just sabotaging the sound and the phones from afar.
Yeah, I think he went to a voodoo doctor down in New Orleans and was like, I want to sabotage a podcast.
Well, there you have
Oh,
it.
now I'm
brought a microphone with him.
I'm even more envious now.
But you
God.
can
Still waters run deep.
check out Literary Hangover at patreon.com/literary hangover. All right, quick break. Fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude,
Dude.
you want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy!
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agreed.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up. Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me...
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
We are back. Just on Twitter, looking at David Dayen's tweets. I feel like I could probably just... Oh, shoot. They just went away. That stupid Twitter. Oh, there it is. Dayen retweets a piece in the Washington Post. Democrats eye quick impeachment of probe of Trump. It's freshman push to keep the probe narrow. And he writes, this is one of the only weeks of the Trump presidency where the news cycle isn't playing out on his terms. Sounds like a good idea to wrap that up quickly and in secret, he says. And then he's also got a piece at the Prospect exulting that the important necessary breach between Wall Street and the Democrats may finally happen. And I would imagine he is that the piece is premised on the idea that Bernie or Warren will win, as opposed to Joe Biden, who apparently is out today with his advisors trying to figure out, do they need a dark money super PAC in the primary?
Oh, yeah. I saw an article saying that the Wall Street people are threatening to support Trump if Warren or Sanders is the nominee.
Yes. Yeah, I think that that's not an illogical step for them. But here's the thing. The press doesn't seem to understand this, and neither do these people on Wall Street. Or I should say, let me rephrase this. It's not a question of them voting for Trump. Nobody cares who they vote for. There's not that many of them. It's the question of like, I mean, it's a brilliant piece of almost like performance art when they do this, because the form basically provides the function. They're basically saying, hey, we have outsized influence on politics because of our money, and we will back those people who are who are running on the idea that we shouldn't have outsized influence on politics because of our money, because that's just wrong. And that way it's rather poetic. And so very excited about that prospect. I want to talk about this for a moment because this is sort of interesting. The right-wing talking points of the day are centered around this opening by Adam Schiff. And I have mixed feelings about this. This is in the hearings yesterday. I want everybody to listen to this because in some respects, what Adam Schiff is doing is exactly what we know the president does and the right does. It is an acknowledgement that we live in different media universes, and that the critique of what we say as politicians is almost irrelevant. Certainly in the context of like Trump or on the right, the critique is worn like a badge of honor. The center and the left, I think, is a little bit more concerned about these things. But here's Adam Schiff. He's opening up the hearing, and what he does is characterize the conversation between Donald Trump and the president of Ukraine.
The essence of what the president communicates. We've been very good to your country, very good. No other country has done as much as we have. But you know what? I don't see much reciprocity here. I hear what you want. I have a favor I want from you, though. And I'm going to say this only 7 times, so you better listen good. I want you to make up dirt on my political opponent, understand lots of it. On this and on that. I'm going to put you in touch with people, and not just any people. I'm going to put you in touch with Attorney General of the United States, my Attorney General, Bill Barr. He's got the whole weight of the American law enforcement behind him. And I'm going to put you in touch with Rudy. You're going to love him, trust me. You know what I'm asking, and so I'm only going to say this a few more times, in a few more ways. And by the way, don't call me again. I'll call you when you've done what I asked. This is, in sum and character, what the president was trying to communicate with the president of Ukraine. It would be funny if it wasn't such a graphic betrayal of the president's oath of office.
All right, let's leave it there. And
still funny, but very effective of shit.
Right. Okay. I want you to keep that in mind with the funny, because I heard 2 right-wing talkers today saying like, well, like it was one of those, it was 2 guys on WABC. They're no, like they're ancient. Talk about boomers. But the way that they were going back, just hold that thought for a moment and we'll get to it. But that is exactly what the essence of that call was. And the behavior that is outlined in this whistleblower report. That there are reports. I saw one reporter say, we had information that we never printed, that the reason why Mike Pence called off his trip to go to the inauguration of, is it Zelensky? And we sent instead the Secretary of Energy, I can't even remember his name now. What's that? Rick Perry. Is because Trump didn't want them to have the vice president there until he got the stuff he wanted about Joe Biden's corruption. And so that whole, like, you know, don't call me, I'll call you when you've done what I've asked you to do, is exactly what Trump was communicating. Now, the critique is like, he's making this up. It's an impeachment hearing. It's an impeachment hearing. How can he make that up and characterize it? Well, of course, he can. He wasn't going to read through the entire transcript, which again is not a verbatim transcript. But that is their talking point at the moment, and I just don't think it's going to work. It will work with their people, but we are living in a different era where we cannot expend energy in trying to get to their people. We need to expend energy in getting to our people, the rest of the people, the majority of the people, and tell them and educate them exactly to as to what the president is doing. And I would say this is also the case more broadly in terms of politics as it exists, whether it's in the presidential campaign and just about questions of like of healthcare or, you know, college debt or Wall Street or whatever it is, that trying to chase after their people who are in a hermetically sealed bubble comes at the expense of motivating the rest of the people. So Schiff could have gotten up there and not been so pithy and characterized it with a certain amount of satire. Like he said, it would have been funny if it wasn't so tragically accurate. But if he had done so to placate some notion of like he should be more of a straight shooter from the right, he would fail to be able to communicate to people who might be marginal in terms of thinking this is important. And that dynamic is really important, I think, to understand, not just in the context of impeachment, but more broadly in American politics today, that it is not about persuasion. It is about motivation. How do you communicate to those people who are already predisposed to believing what you believe, that this is important and digestible? Okay, so on to the second point. So I'm listening to this radio show, and there's two boomers, and one is like on the right, and the other is like on the mostly, like center right. But he's like the Alan Combs type of figure. And then there, of course, is a woman who's on the show who basically steps in and like, you guys aren't PC. And it's that type of dynamic. It's really just tragic. But I will occasionally dip into right-wing radio on days like this to find out just what they're saying. This is a local show, but local New York. And so the guy, the right-winger, plays Schiff's thing, and he goes, can you believe this guy? He's lying. He's making it all up. That's not the transcript. And the other guy goes, just telling a joke. And as a reference to this statement that Donald Trump said at the UN, I think it is, right?
It's a UN sideline on threatening to kill journalists with General Sisi.
Right. This was apparently billed as a family event where people brought in their kids. Now, I don't know why you bring your kids in to listen to Donald Trump unless you really want to spend the next, 15 years trying to make them less cynical. But here is Donald Trump referring to the whistleblower, right? This is like, here we go.
Because that's close to a spy. I want to know who's the person that gave the whistleblower, who's the person that gave the whistleblower the information? Because that's close to a spy. You know what we used to do in the old days when we were smart, right? With spies and treason, right? We used to handle it a little differently than we do now.
Yeah. Now people start in the fuller clip, people start laughing after that a little bit, and the right wing DJ was like, well, people laughed at that one. Well, there you can hear people giggling actually at the at Schiff's couple of turns of phrases there.
Well, you can hear that. Also, like, please, before people, I'm not making this comparison because I always feel the need to say this, but like, Idi Amin was a wit sometimes. Like, just like humor and irony does not mean that you're not doing something.
Right.
Right? Like sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes like he's saying in a funny way, will someone please rid me of this meddlesome priest? He's saying it. Jacob Wall, Benjamin Dixon flagged the Jacob Wall thing. Jacob Wall is a relentless joke, but he's still talking about like, putting some type of price on finding out who this is or something, or, at least he was yesterday. I mean, and it's all a joke, but it's also a joke that's being spread by the president.
How about this for a joke? Hey, Russia, if you're listening, I'd take those other 30,000 emails. And then the next day, Russian agents hack into an email server.
Oh, yeah. And different things are funny to people based on their societal context and the power dynamics and just like what they're into. Like I'm reminded of the show Dangerous Comedy with Larry Charles. Have you guys watched that?
No.
Where he interviews people all over the world in like really intense war-torn parts of the world, even about the things that they find funny, like General Butt Naked in I'm gonna mess up which country this is, but like a lot of these warlords and soldiers are like, oh, you know what's funny? Killing someone who's weaker than you. Ha ha ha.
I'm just saying, like, even that's interesting, but I'm just saying very specifically with these types of things, like you can read, if you read about other examples of leaders in this mode. Sometimes it is like, who is a real pain in the ass? And it's a chuckle, but it's also like a signal. Yep. It's, it isn't just a chuckle.
Yep. Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 308 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, it's Kowalski from Nebraska.
Kowalski from Nebraska. What's on your mind?
Well, needless to say, my Facebook feed is complete cancer right now.
Well, but do
A
tell.
lot of mixed feelings on impeachment.
Who are they coming from?
Pretty much everybody. A lot of people drawing lines in the sand, other people who are saying we need to investigate because it's holding your leaders to account, those people getting their asses chewed by Trump supporters. It's a nightmare.
Well, welcome to just about every day of my life. What I mean, so but characterize it though. I mean, like what is there? Are there any 15,000 feet observations, or is it just really that just so all chaotic at this moment?
Right now, it seems to be pretty much just chaotic. One thing that is starting to make the rounds is people curious why Clinton's not being impeached, which I find absolutely hilarious. Like, it's something Turning Point USA is putting out, but
How could that happen, though?
complete and utter stupidity.
Wait. How Clinton's not being impeached?
Yeah, the whole email thing's coming up, and now some reason Joe Biden's niece is getting brought up for some sort of credit card scandal. I don't know. They're throwing, I think, everything they can at the wall and hoping something sticks.
I will say this. I would be very not surprised if a credit card company personally hooked up Joe Biden's niece. I just want to put that on the record here. I don't think that's impeachable, but that would not surprise me. In fact, Chris Dodd, who weirdly enough in the context of Latin America was at times actually like a very good senator, but at the end of the day, pretty corporatist guy. He basically had to not run for re-election because at the height of the financial crisis, he was put on like preferred VIP treatment loans for a house he bought.
Got a sweet
he got
like sub
oh my God.
rate mortgage.
He got the nicest, and it was
he got like a jumbo at the rate of I don't know.
And what was funny was I actually believed him, and this is the culture of corruption stuff. Like in these interviews, he was like, I thought it was a courtesy. Like I can see how in his mind he reconciled that.
I mean, look,
just like he didn't even perceive it as a problem.
Well,
I don't think he was lying, but it revealed the whole problem.
Kowalski, appreciate the call. Here's the thing. Every day in private life, there are situations like that where
Absolutely.
there are situations where it's like, oh, yeah, no, my cousin works for this mortgage broker, and so I get like 0.25% off. It's courtesy. Or, I mean, this happens all the time.
And this is times a million. It's like, oh no, I usher through deregulation through my committee, and they look out for me a little bit. But that's not even how he would literally just look at it as it's a courtesy.
From his perspective, it could be like, even if he was not bad on that committee, what it does is it gets them access so that, because he sat on a banking committee.
He was mixed on that committee.
Yeah.
I have no doubt in his head. Sometimes I go with them the way they want. Sometimes I go with them the way they like, but they know me.
I don't even think it's that, like,
They know
I don't
me.
even think he sees it that way.
Not even
it's
just they know
a question
me.
of like, look, they come in and they get to tell me their side of the story. And look, the bottom line is like, I'll tell you right now, if you give me someone who is sitting on the fence about anything or doesn't know much about a specific issue, and you give me an hour with them and give my opponent 10 minutes with them, guess what? 9 times out of 10, they're going to side with me. And of course they're giving me an hour because, dude, I hook them up. I gave them a free subscription to the Majority Report. Hey, what size Majority Report? What size shirt do you wear?
That's it.
Because I'll get you a large. You know what? You want white? How about white and black? You got it. Well, Sam, come on in. Have a seat. Come on. That's basically what happens. And I don't think Now, I think there's also other more nefarious things where it's like, you scratch my back, I scratch your back. But I think with some of these people, it's just sort of a question of like, you're swimming in a certain
Well, that was what I
waters.
was. That was actually what. Yeah, that was what I was. Yeah, that's what I was trying to convey. I think you're totally right, and I think that's why I just remember listening in this interview where he literally just like, I thought it was a courtesy, and I realized I was like, oh, that's not. He's not lying. Because, you know, if he was lying, his press office would come up with something a little bit better than that.
Right.
At the height of like millions of people are losing their houses. There's like nothing but rage at this industry in the country. And this like white-maned genteel senator is like, oh, that was a courtesy. I was like, wow, he's delusional.
And it's not, I mean, it's, you know, part of it is just this is the way that things operate, you know, and part of it is also, I think, like once you become like a senator in particular, but even a congressperson, you just, all of a sudden, like, I mean, when I did that cop show and I was dressed as a cop in New York City, Benjamin and I walked into a diner and we literally ordered a couple of donuts just because we wanted to do it. And they were like, you got it. What? Yeah, thank you. What? All right. Thank you. Thank you. And we walked away with free donuts.
Someone's going to clip this and say Sam's stealing valor.
Yep. Sorry.
I'm totally behind that. Also, like people who are rich and famous are just used to getting free stuff all the time.
That's the other thing.
Maybe that's why they gave you the donuts.
That's what I took it as. Like, oh, you must have seen my work on All American Girl. But that
Sam dresses up as a homeless
and I'll tell you something.
Veteran during the weekend.
There is a concept of,
is that more controversial?
Of acquired narcissism. There's a concept of acquired narcissism, and I've known some people who are pretty well known, and after a while, it begins to impact you. You just assume this is the way the world operates for everybody. Because, you know, as I go through life, I just assume this is more or less the way the world operates for everybody on some level. And although at times I get pushback from that, a lot of those folks, they don't get pushback.
Well, you hear this, though, even in much smaller, like I've noticed this sometimes talking to just, you know, I would say like comfortable people about like income crisis and we all know the famous stat we keep repeating of most, you know, a lot of Americans can't get $500 in case of emergency. And I've heard at least 2 or 3 people say, and I mean this like completely innocently, and it's like they can kind of slot, like they understand, okay, maybe there's a handful of people in just like pure deprivation and they need help. They can kind of conceptualize that. But then you'll be explaining like, you know, the people really struggling, but who are like lower middle class or something. And I've heard people say like, yeah, I mean, I know, but that's terrible. And we should do something. But like, there's got to be someone that they could borrow like $1,000 from. Right. And it's like, no.
Right.
That's kind of the point, man. Like they can't.
There was a debate in 2008. I think it was, I think it was a primary debate. I think it was the Democrats. And I cannot remember who the journalist was, but it was sort of like a mainstream journalist who had a question, I think it was in St. Anselm's College, about the professors, and assumed that like professors at this college made $120,000 and that they were middle class, you know, like middle class, or that I can't, or that was the median of I mean, just like, there's a lot of people who, if you're living that lifestyle and you're not vigilant about it, you can easily lose touch or remain out of touch as to what is the reality. But we're far afield now.
Or you just decide that being famous is awesome and you deserve everything that you get as a result.
That's basically the way I walk through life.
That's why you dress up as a homeless veteran on the weekends. Clip this. Just like, I was in Grenada and I have carpal tunnel.
It was Gibson, right? There it is. What is it? Okay. If you take a family of 2 professors here at St. Anselm, they're going to be in the $200,000 category that you're talking about lifting the taxes on. And then there was laughter. Like the whole forum It was like it was in a college, auditorium, and everyone started laughing. And then like all the candidates, it was Edwards, Obama, and Clinton. They all basically said, Charlie, I think you,
and then an adjunct
he tried to play it off by saying 2 public schools in New York, teachers in New York, making $200,000 10 years ago. And more laughter.
Wow, look at the 3 dunks here. John Edwards, I don't think I agree with you.
Right.
Oh, but I'm not sure that's and then Hillary, I like Hillary has the best one. That may be NYU, Charlie.
Right, exactly. But I mean, can you imagine being such a well-known, Charlie Gibson was a well-known news anchor, reporter, and being so oblivious? Like, you're the one who's questioning these candidates, and you're so oblivious as to, like, you asked this question and frame it this way on public. Like, this is your job, dude. Like, it could be upsetting if this guy did this at a cocktail party, right? Like, he just like threw it off, like, But this is your job, man. Like. Wow, that was just amazing.
Unfortunately, I can't imagine that.
I know.
An adjunct in the back was like, Charlie, that was hilarious, but please, I might crack my ribs and I don't have health care.
Right, exactly. My $8,000 a semester, I'm raking in.
Imagine being more out of touch than Hillary.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, he would have been the first one. He would have been the first one that if Hillary then had like some type of not knowing like the price of orange juice, he would have done like 50 segments on it.
All right, let's go to some of these stuff from the McGuire House Intel hearing. Joseph McGuire, the acting director of national intelligence, he said during the hearing, I believe at one point, had I known this whistleblower account was out there, I would not have taken this job. Clearly a guy in over his head, but what's important is that the committee make it clear that this guy messed up. The bottom line is if you got a whistleblower complaint about the president of the United States, you don't go to the White House and ask him, is this appropriate for me to give to Congress? Here is, let's go to Mike Quigley. First asked, why is Rudy Giuliani being deputized by the State Department? I mean, first of all, let's just assume Rudy Giuliani wasn't even working for the president of the United States. The question would be, why would the State Department deputize Rudy Giuliani? But there's an added, I think, like, mystery as to why they would do this if he's the president's personal defense attorney, as Rudy Giuliani refers to himself.
Giuliani, a highly respected man. He was the mayor of New York, a Graber. I would like him to call you. I will ask him to call you along with the Attorney General. Your reaction to the civilian dealing with these. In the complaint, it talks about our national security. The Inspector General talks about this as the highest responsibility among those that the DNI has, and obviously Mr. Giuliani is playing this role. To your knowledge, does he have security clearance?
I don't know. Congressman Quigley, I'm neither aware or unaware whether or not Mr. Giuliani has a security clearance.
Before this all happened, were you aware of his role or understanding what his role was, doing what you do?
Congressman Quigley, my only knowledge of what Mr. Giuliani does, I have to be honest with you, I get from TV and from the news media. I am not aware of what he does, in fact, for the president.
Are you aware of any communication by Mr. Giuliani and your office about how he should proceed with this role, given the classified nature, the national security implications that are in the complaint, that are in the transcript, and the role that he is playing?
Well, I have read the transcripts just as you have, so my knowledge of his activity in there is just limited to the conversation that the president had with the president of Ukraine.
It's It's a question that Rudy Giuliani doesn't seem to think is any problem whatsoever. Here's Rudy Giuliani this is on Laura Ingram's show, right? And Giuliani is now he thinks this is all exculpatory. He thinks like, oh, I got asked by the State Department, as if the State Department just sort of out of the blue just said like, oh, I know Rudy Giuliani, of course. Yeah. They're just sitting around the State Department going like, we gotta get in touch with the folks in Ukraine. It's too bad we don't have an apparatus for that. Well, Rudy Giuliani, the mayor of New York. Yeah, he'd be great for this.
Rudy Giuliani, the country attorney.
Yeah, he's a country attorney. He'd love to do it.
My great honor is a humble country attorney from Kanashi to go to Ukraine and help you commit a global crime.
Laura Ingraham keeps having Rudy Giuliani on her show and seems to be functioning like you would like a daughter would if their dad was starting to lose it and like, I'm going to try and help you here, Dad. Like, okay, Dad, calm down. Just tell us why you did it. You came on, you have a lie, please deliver it.
This is filled. This is filled
I want
with
to ask
lies.
this. Rudy, I want to ask this. Who told, where did the State Department get its marching orders from here? Because people, I think, are extremely confused. All these wild allegations about you, you have a series of texts that refute pretty much every single one of them. And so the State Department was then told to connect you with them. How did that begin?
There's a reason I'm in the middle of this. And the reason is emerges from the corruption of how they've tried to hide this for years, including trying to cover up Biden.
Pause it for 1 second. Now, what Giuliani is talking about is, and he's trying to hide the fact that he was sent to Ukraine on a mission to get information that would be exculpatory or at least mitigating for Paul Manafort, to justify a pardon by Donald Trump of Paul Manafort, which is how he met everybody there, apparently. And while he was there, he started fishing around about these stories about Joe Biden. Remember, he was meeting with the folks in the administration prior to Zelensky. So he was meeting with the old prosecutors guys. This prosecutor was corrupt by all accounts. This prosecutor was in the sights of Joe Biden, who wanted to get rid of that prosecutor. Remember now, like in many respects, Ukraine is, maybe client state is too strong of a word, but maybe client state. And everyone perceived the last administration to be highly corrupt. They wanted the prosecutor out. This prosecutor knew that Biden was gunning for him. And so here we go.
Including trying to cover up Biden for years. I got this because the FBI wouldn't take it. For the Ukrainians who came to me back in November of 2018 and then subsequently have told this to 5 other people who could testify to it, told me that we've been trying to get to you for over a year and a half. We have solid evidence of collusion, not Russian, Ukrainian, not with Trump, with Hillary and the DNC. We believe George Soros is behind it because his company was involved in it. By the way, when Biden's son's case was dismissed, the other case the crooked new prosecutor had to dismiss was Soros's case, which is why the Biden thing is relevant to me, because Biden's corruption, Biden's compromising the president of the Ukraine led to the dismissal of the case against Soros's organization. Had that case gone on,
look at Laura Ingraham.
We would have had the evidence to
face.
refute the Mueller investigation.
This is like literally, it's as if you had like, if Laura Ingraham had said, hey, bring me an AP, go find me someone off the street and make sure they're talking to themselves and bring them in here and sit them down, put them in a suit and have them talk. I mean,
try Port Authority. There's a lot of people there you could find.
Giuliani has basically said the reason why he was involved in this is because the FBI wouldn't do their job. And the Ukrainians came to him because they were the only person they could reach because they needed to get to the president. You understand what's going on here? And then Rudy was going to Ukraine to find the hidden George Soros server, which was pulling the strings on Biden and Clinton. And that's when Laura Ingraham goes, yeah. Then he continues on. And then I was the only one. See, I work out quite a bit. You know, I wear this like look of like I'm out of shape, Laura, but like I had to go into Ukraine.
This is where the ad for the late 90s movie comes out, which is what happens when a country lawyer from rural Brooklyn gets asked to deal. But going to the Ukraine might be above his pay grade, or is it?
Starring Joe Pesci.
Starring Joe Pesci. I didn't know fucking George Soros was involved. I'm going to get clipped. He's a fucking Jew who collaborated with Nazis.
I'm telling you. The impeachment goes on, and within like 3 or 4 months, Hugh Hewitt's already on this. Like every right-wing talker, they're all going to be all in on this. And the beauty is going to be when this stuff like dovetails in with Q. And it probably already is. But this is all well and good because this is part of the reason why you have impeachment is to drive these people deeper and deeper into these rabbit holes that they get.
Right. If this just leads them further into the abyss, that's great.
Do you have the part where he shows text messages on his iPad? Talk about boomer stuff.
I mean, we could pull it.
These are the text messages from Volker, who is who's like a member of the John McCain, or the director of the John McCain Institute.
Rudy Giuliani.
He's been in Ukraine I would imagine, as part of like to the extent that there's any project to push for a war. I'm sure that's what he has been there
facilitating arms sales, privatization schemes.
Absolutely, and he's doing it for free.
Rudy Giuliani was a simple country lawyer who got a call from an intern in the Ukraine.
Not only is Volker
an unpaid internship,
yeah, he's doing it for free.
Arms deals.
You're probably wondering how I got into this situation.
You're probably wondering how I wind up in the fucking Ukraine.
Giuliani, also unpaid. I mean,
it's a citizen mission.
I don't get paid. You don't understand how payment works because you're a normal Stugatz on the subway with your dick in your hand. You never gotten paid through a slush fund in your life, and you talk about Sex in the City like you're some worldly cosmopolite. You ever get paid indirectly from a slush fund by a gangster who runs a caviar factory in Kazakhstan? I think not.
All right, we have another issue too. Here is Peter Walsh, Democrat from Vermont, and we should say there are two Republican governors who have come out in favor of the impeachment inquiry. It is the governor from Vermont and the governor from Massachusetts. Now, it's not shocking, but this is clip number 6. This is Democratic Peter Walsh asking about of Joseph McGuire, acting.
I think that's Welch.
Welch, excuse me. Asking Joseph McGuire, acting director of national intelligence, why, after the inspector general, now understand, the inspector general didn't just take the whistleblower's word for it. The inspector general took, I think, like 2 weeks and went around and spoke to the people, or at least we don't know who exactly, to the people that the whistleblower had gotten his information from, and deemed this a credible and urgent report. Now, that is actually a specific statutory criteria and threshold. He gave this to the head of the DNI. The DNI then gave it to the Justice Department. First, gave it to the White House to see if they were okay with it being released, and then gave it to the Justice Department to investigate whether this was criminal. And they interviewed nobody, and within a couple of days, they said, nothing to see here, quashed it, the whole thing. And Welch wants to know, What the frick?
It existed was waived. Under your approach, as you saw it, it means that no one would be investigating the underlying conduct because in this case, executive privilege applies or may apply. And number two, the president who had the conversation is above the law. So that's a dilemma for our democracy, is it not?
The complaint was sent to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, totally disregarding any concern for executive privilege.
I understand, but the Federal Bureau of Investigation never did a follow-up investigation, right?
I believe that they have concluded the investigation. I'm not sure. In addition to being involved with this matter here, I also have other pressing matters. As Director, I apologize.
And the Justice Department, led by Mr. Barr, who is a subject of the complaint, is the department that provided the opinion that there's no action to be taken.
I believe that the Attorney General was mentioned in the complaint, not necessarily subject of the complaint, sir.
Well, he was mentioned.
Yes, sir.
All right, I yield back. Thank you.
All right, yeah, he was mentioned as basically covering up the phone call. And the thing that Welch is saying that, like, wait a second, dude, you basically did two things. You gave it to the Justice Department and watched them not investigate it and quash it. A Justice Department headed by a guy named in the whistleblower complaint. The whistleblower wasn't talking like, hey, maybe Bill Barr should look into this. He was saying Bill Barr knew about it. And then the other action you took was to give it to the White House to see if they were okay with releasing it. And so Welch is asking this director of national intelligence, 11 oaths to the Constitution. What's the scenario where this plays out and there's any type of accountability? You just gave two parties named in the complaint the ability to quash the complaint. How is this supposed to be? How is this supposed to work out here? I'll tell you something. There's never been a day like yesterday that was more exculpatory for Edward Snowden than yesterday was. Because
100 million %.
This is a perfect example of how the whistleblower protections are nil. Not only did the Times at least identify for those in the White House, not publicly identify, but for those in the White House who wanted to know who it was, they have a much better shot at figuring out who that is because of the clues that the Times provided. And you
for
have
those
Donald
in the
Trump.
White House who want to find out who the whistleblower is.
Right.
Here are some clues.
Exactly.
As the Times would phrase it.
Yes. And
finally he gets treated with a
then
little
you have
bit
the
of
president
hometown
say
support.
that we're going to shoot him. Joking, of course, joking. And this thing, was not going to see the light of the day. And this is a situation where you have at least some competing interests within the government. The whistleblower protections are supposed to work even if the entire apparatus of the government essentially is aligned against this secret coming out, if it's a whistleblowing. The IG is the most independent figure in this whole process. And they did everything they were supposed to do, and still, this may have not seen the light of day were it not for just a stroke of luck. And frankly, somebody breaking protocol. Because someone broke protocol, someone leaked it illicitly. If you have a process that is supposed to ensure the integrity and the ability of people to whistleblow, and it relies on someone breaking the law, then the process is broken. Broken.
Free Edward Snowden. Drop all charges.
I mean, you can understand why the guy took off.
I mean, that's the thing is, yes. And I think I said some, I supported him, but said some dumb things at the time. And if I recall correctly, and it's like, Yes, we understand that states act in their rational self-interest. This is somebody who exposed incredible, extensive wrongdoing and then was like, you know what? I'm actually not going to just be a martyr to the case. I think I would still like to be free.
Yeah.
I support him, and he's done an incredible public service for all of us. And it is incredible. I mean, in light of this, we have a bunch of people who demonized him saying, we got to stick up for whistleblowers, and then he goes on Good Morning America, and they just hit him with the same national security state talking points that they've been using forever.
Yep. And incidentally, if you want to search for the report that shows what kind of national security damage was created, how many people lost their lives because of Edward Snowden, I suggest you go to Google and find nothing. You will find nothing. And the idea that they wouldn't have said that there was something if there was something is absurd. Oh, God. Right?
Are you kidding me?
Right?
Are you kidding me? I'm actually, frankly, shocked they didn't just lie about it.
They probably didn't know what he had. Frankly, that was the other thing that I think it showed. They had no idea what he had. So they don't know if their information is secure anyways. Meanwhile, impeachment has apparently caused a major rift, not just on Kowalski's Facebook page.
This is Kowalski from Nebraska.
But
Love that
also
guy.
at Fox News. Gabe Sherman reports in, I think it's, where's he? In Vanity Fair. That this morning, September 26th, yesterday morning, Thursday morning, Sean Hannity told friends that the whistleblower's allegations are, quote, really bad. A person briefed on Hannity's conversations told me. Now, Sean Hannity, we may be dealing with a scorned lover type of situation because Trump has been listening to Tucker Carlson a little bit more than Hannity, particularly, I think, on the whole Bolton thing. And so there could be a little bit of this going on. But according to a Fox staffer, told Gabe Sherman, it's management bedlam. This massive thing happened and no one knows how to cover it. Here is a schism that made its way onto television just the other night. Here is Tucker Carlson sitting down with Joe DiGenova, who is a former Trump lawyer.
He looks like one.
Yep.
That guy definitely has the look of a former and or current Trump lawyer.
Referring to an appearance that Judge Napolitano made on Fox earlier the day before. And here, I'll let Tucker walk us through this.
Yesterday, Judge Andrew Napolitano, who is a legal analyst at Fox and a very nice guy, I will say, I've always liked him, went on one of our daytime shows and declared that the president's phone call with the head of Ukraine was a crime. Here's what he said.
It is a crime for the president to solicit aid for his campaign from a foreign government.
So that would be that to which the president has admitted is in and of itself
Pause
a
it
crime.
for one second. Now, just I want to remind you, do you all remember the James O'Keefe sting where they had a video of someone who purported to be from Canada in line buying some Hillary Clinton merchandise at a campaign event? And as soon as the Canadian bought the merchandise, they cut a video showing how she was taking foreign money and it's illicit.
I don't remember that
Yes,
one.
Oh, yeah.
That's funny.
Oh, yeah.
Was that an O'Keefe thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they thought, like, we have a huge crime here. And it was like, I don't know, like a $16 hat or something. Maybe it was a $30 hat. And
hey, could I get a T-shirt? Sure, there you go. Whatever, $15.
Technically speaking,
Global conspiracy.
I think it was a crime. Now, the campaign actively soliciting services in kind from a foreign government is illicit. It is a breach of election laws. I would imagine it's also rather unseemly, but it is illegal. Go ahead.
Yes.
So
wait,
that
go back a little bit. Sorry. Just, Trailer pack.
Campaign from a foreign government.
So that would be what that to which the president has admitted is in and of itself a crime.
Yes.
So that definitely got our attention. Of course, it's a crime. And so I asked you, because you prosecuted a lot of crimes. And
Pause it. I asked you, as Trump's former legal defense attorney, is that a crime?
Who didn't see it, here's what you said.
Well, I think Judge Napolitano is a fool, and I think what he said today is foolish. No, it is not a crime. Let me underscore emphatically that nothing that the president said on that call, or what we think he said on that call, constitutes a crime. And even if he had said, you're not going to get the money, it would not be a crime.
Well, apparently, our daytime host, who hosted Judge Napolitano, was watching last night and was outraged by what you said, and quite ironically, called you partisan. Here's what he said.
A partisan guest who supports President Trump was asked about Judge Napolitano's legal assessment. And when he was asked, he said, unchallenged, Judge Napolitano is a fool. Attacking our colleague who's here to offer legal assessments on our air in our work home is repugnant.
Repugnant! Not clear if that was you or me, but someone's repugnant. And here's what, finally, last soundbite, here's how Judge Napolitano responded.
A lot of legal authority, and I join it on the other side. And the other side basically says anything that helps the campaign, whether it's cash or emails or smearing your opponent, is a thing of value.
And therefore, requesting it is a crime.
Yes.
Now, unlike maybe some dayside hosts, I'm not very partisan, and it was a sincere question. Is it a crime or not? So given everything that's happened in the last 24 hours, I just want to throw it to you again. Was it a crime or not?
Absolutely not. Now, let me sort of educate Judge Napolitano. The President of the United States is the executive branch under Article 2. He is the chief law enforcement officer of the United States. He can ask anyone, a citizen, a foreign leader, a question. He can make a suggestion about an investigation because he runs them. And by the way, in the latest set to with the whistleblower, the Office of Legal Counsel has said that requesting information from a foreign government is not a thing of value. It is not a foreign contribution. I must say this. I've been a U.S. attorney, an independent counsel, an investigative counsel on Capitol Hill in the House and the Senate. Judge Napolitano has never been a U.S. attorney. He's never been a federal prosecutor. He has never conducted a federal grand jury. I have done all of those things. If he wants to have an opinion, that's fine. I am not a paid Fox contributor. I am a guest of Fox Network. I come on when they ask me. So, and I am told, please, whatever you do, tell the truth. Don't make things up. Don't cover. So what I say, I believe, of course, as a matter of law, I know what I'm talking about in the law. I try to be truthful.
Right.
I was very truthful last night.
What is he so angry about?
First off,
Napolitano didn't call him an idiot.
Donald Trump does not run the Ukrainian investigation. Donald Trump is not the executive
Sam, he's
of
the
Ukraine.
president.
The notion that he can ask anything, in that the Justice Department that quashed the investigation, that's what he's talking about. He is citing the cover-up as justification as to why it's not a law. Why it's not illegal. The idea that that he would hold up this money and I'm just asking for information that is made up. And in fact, if I don't get it, guess what? You're not getting your money. It's a nice bit of aid you got here. It should be a shame if something happened to it.
That's not illegal. Judge Napolitano's an absolute idiot.
Hey,
and he shouldn't respond to me calling him an idiot. That exchange went like, Brendan, if I said, hey, you know what? No offense, Sam, but Brendan's a moron. He shouldn't do the packets. And Brendan came in and is like, you know, I'm just doing my job, putting the packets together. It's too bad Michael feels that way. I've got a lot of experience. And I come back and I'm like, how dare you? You are an idiot. And you didn't acknowledge it.
I've been putting packets together for years.
He got so triggered in the second segment. And Judge Napolitano, like, I mean, he's not going to just take that lying down, but he wasn't escalating it. And then that guy freaks out with Tucker.
I really like the idea of like someone in real America just tuning into Fox News the past few days, and it's basically 3 Italian lawyers from New York and New Jersey just like yelling at each other.
We're all country lawyers.
We're all country attorneys. This is a friggin' extended argument spilling out of Sparks Steakhouse.
We're all country attorneys.
They literally are going from Midtown steakhouses and pasta joints in town cars to Fox, then out to various suburbs in either Jersey or Long Island, carrying on an extended argument about just how permissively criminal the criminal real estate developer president can be.
Yeah, they're real
That is
Americans.
literally what's happening.
The other funny part was when Tucker Carlson said he's not partisan.
Right.
He isn't partisan. He's Trumpistan.
Trumpistan. Imran Khan was on Morning Joe this morning. He's the, what are they, Prime Minister? They
Prime
call it,
Minister
right? Prime Minister of Pakistan. And as you know, there's problems in Kashmir. We don't have a clip of him addressing this. There was just one moment of levity, I guess, for him. He's here, hopefully.
He is trying a lot to stop the war in Afghanistan. That's because people have to remind themselves, and Pakistan plays a double game and everything, but there's a huge cost to the war in Afghanistan in Pakistan from even just like environmental pollution from setting up like landing strips and transports and stuff like that.
But here he is with Joe and Mika on Morning Joe.
Would ask that we $1.5 trillion at least have been spent in Afghanistan. What have we achieved in this? And then I hear some people saying that, actually, no, we should sort of keep the military or keep this going. This will go on for another 19 years. The taxpayer in U.S. is going to keep pouring in money in there. While the U.S. was pouring money in Afghanistan in this futile war, the Chinese were developing a first world infrastructure, and you just have to go to China to see the way their infrastructure is. And I'm in New York, and I'm watching the car bumping around here. Okay. That money was wasted. You actually.
There you go. It's obviously here at the UN this week, and he's making a very good point. Why are we wasting so much money on relentless wars?
Mika and Joe know what he's talking about too, with the bumpy roads.
Oh, it's so bumpy for them.
I
Very
like that
unhappy
though.
about
That is somebody, I forget who made this point to me first, but they were saying like even when someone like Thomas Friedman would scratch out a third of like some type of decent infrastructure column, it would always be like, oh, he just took the Amtrak from DC
Right,
to
exactly.
from New York. Okay.
Exactly.
That's why all of a sudden, so they're just like, hey, we don't really broadband in rural America. Oh, upgrade. Well, you know what? That's true. The Midtown commute is getting super bumpy.
Really tough.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Calling from a 408 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 408. 408.
Hello.
Hi. Hello.
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 Hi.
Hi. Who's this?
Hi. This is Sarah from not from North Carolina. I'm in North Carolina right now.
Okay. And what's on your mind, Sarah?
All right. So on your show, and obviously a lot of political shows, climate change is getting a lot of attention. But that's not like the whole ecological issue going on. I mean, like we're stripping the entire ecology from like vast swaths of the U.S. and the world and replacing it with like sterile, invasive monocultures that barely sequester any more carbon than a parking lot. And if we don't like develop a sustainable food culture, we're going to have another dust bowl by 2030.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if like maybe you would have an expert on the show to talk about that sometime.
Have who on the show?
Like find an expert that you can get on the show to talk about that.
I feel like I interviewed someone about a new Dust Bowl. I can't remember exactly who it was, but we did have somebody on. I feel like it might have been a vacation show. Give us a minute, we'll find it. But yes, share your concern.
Well, I do think it needs a lot more attention.
Yeah.
In general,
Hannah Holloman.
and like preferably that expert would be Indigenous, because Indigenous people are at the forefront of pretty much every movement against settler colonial land management.
Well, I'll tell you what. If you have any ideas, send us an email at majorityreporters at gmail.com. Majorityreporters@gmail.com. It was Hannah Holman, and I guess she was talking about the legacy of the Dust Bowl on the program, but it also is she was talking about the potential for a new Dust Bowl. But I appreciate the call. Thank you. It was Hannah Holman. And
I agree. I want to just underline, I've been learning a lot from Joshua Kahn and others. And I think the Mauna Kea protests in Hawaii are really important. There's a huge, even just practical significance, frankly. Like if you look at the Amazon, the ecocide there is an ethnic cleansing also of indigenous people. And keeping that system from being utterly destroyed, which literally threatens everybody on the planet, is inseparable from indigenous sovereignty. It's true. And all of the oil stuff and pipelines that Trudeau has muscled through in Canada is a big part of that as well. I remember going to Canada one time. I was in Vancouver, British Columbia years ago, just speaking to what she was talking about in terms of getting rid of diverse ecosystems, and you could see a field sometimes that had been totally clear cut, and then they had replanted trees, and they were all these, I mean, just weak, depressing, all the same type, the idea that is any type of replacement for eliminating diverse ecology is ridiculous.
We had her on April 22nd in 2019, April 22nd of this year. And you go back, Hannah Holman, the Dust Bowls of Empire. Check that out. Calling from a 760 area code. Look, folks, you got to listen to the show every single day.
Yeah.
Even if you think it's not going to enter, you got to listen to it every day.
Save the good interviews for the break, too. They're the best.
Calling from 760 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. This is Amy. Sorry, I'm trying to get the speakerphone off.
Amy? Where are you calling from?
Yes, San Diego.
San Diego. What's on your mind, Amy?
So I actually have a question for Jamie today.
Okay.
I'm in college right now, and I'm taking a class called Black Feminist Thought and Activism. And I remember a few weeks ago she was talking about how she went to a protest with Never Again Action, I believe.
Close the camps.
You're saying something about how, close the camps, yeah. You're saying something about how, you asked not to get arrested, and I was intrigued by that because in this class we have an activism project, and I've never really done any direct nonviolent action protests.
So what's your question?
How did you ask to not be arrested? That was interesting to me. I had never heard of that because I've seen a lot of protesters get arrested, and I didn't know that, you could choose that sort of where you are in the front lines, essentially.
Oh, yeah. So when you plan a nonviolent direct action, the idea is that nobody is supposed to get arrested who hasn't signed up to get arrested. So it's very sort of organized the way we do it. So the people who have volunteered themselves to get arrested are the ones who, in this instance, the ones who blocked the West Side Highway and didn't move when the cops told them to move. Everyone who didn't want to get arrested basically stayed out of the street, cleared the street, did what the cops said to do. And my role, in addition to just being at the protest, was as a marshal. So I kind of got between the crowd of people and the cops and made sure that nobody got arrested who didn't want to be.
And my understanding is a lot of times in those protests, the leaders of the protest will inform the police officers, we intend to get arrested today. And we intend to do so. Intend to do so compliantly. You coming to arrest us? We're just, this is, and they'll sometimes say like, we're going to chain ourselves to each other, or we're not going to let go, but we're not going to we may not resist arrest, but we will, lock arms.
Yeah, the idea is to make it very clear to the police that what they're doing is nonviolent, and any violence perpetrated by the police will be totally unwarranted.
And that is to protect the protesters. A lot of times people will also videotape those conversations so that it's on record that to the extent that, the intent of the protesters was to have a nonviolent protest.
Yeah, of course, sometimes things get out of hand. Not all protests are planned the same way. Not all protests are really planned at all. Sometimes they're much more spontaneous, like some stuff we saw around the time of Occupy Wall Street. But I really think that this is a good way to do it.
Appreciate the call, Amy.
Thank you.
Let's go to a 912 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 912?
Hey, Sam.
Hey, who's this?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, it's Aaron in Savannah. How are you doing this afternoon?
Aaron in Savannah. What's on your mind, Aaron?
I was following the conversation. I had kind of an idea of what I wanted to talk about, and then you guys, of course, impeachment is, leading topic of the day. I was calling in to really talk about how Southern state off-year kind of municipal elections are very predictive of the next year. Where I live in Savannah, 4 years ago, the first African-American woman incumbent mayor was defeated in a runoff election by a very standard kind of Republican. First time in 30 years the city saw something like that happen. You kind of saw this play out in Atlanta too, where Keisha Lance Bottoms won by like 1,000 votes just a year right after Trump got elected. Just interesting your thoughts on how the South is really critical to the Democratic nomination. And then if you're still on impeachment, talk a little bit about how impeachment might help Bernie and with the Biden-Ukraine connection things. I'll take the answer off the call.
Okay. The first half, I'm not sure what, if you're saying that it's a leading indicator. I mean, I don't know if you're saying that there's a causal connection or if it's just sort of like an indicator. The South, I think, has probably, relative to the past, a slightly diminished influence in this primary because California has moved up so close on Super Tuesday. I think certainly, it's a firewall for a lot of people, and it will be for Joe Biden. If Joe Biden doesn't win in South Carolina, he is done. Now, right now, he's ahead by, I think, like 20%. 20 percentage points. But it is do or die for him there, assuming he doesn't win in New Hampshire or Iowa. But even if he does, frankly, win one of those two states, he needs to win South Carolina because that is the bedrock of his argument that he appeals to African Americans who are, there's in those states, a high concentration of African American voters in the Democratic primary. My sense of the whole Biden thing with Ukraine is that it is a rather generic question about people who are close to politicians getting jobs that they don't seem to be qualified for, but are being paid because of their proximity to a politician. It's not illegal. I think it's untoward and indicative of a complete lack of just personal integrity by our elite. Maybe in the world, but certainly in this country.
I would say in the world.
And I don't know how you legislate that. Like, I don't know how you say your kid, if you're a politician, your kid can't take a job.
I agree with that.
I don't know how you do that.
Can I just say though, I think it's really I don't know how you do that either, but I think it's interesting that this is the quintessential example of the way that absolutely valid and correct general public disgust and cynicism with most everybody in the entire elite structure gets grafted on to conspiracy theories in the Trump universe, because the broader truth is, and there's a lot of other stories. If you want to go into the Biden family, there's the hedge fund thing with his brother. There's all sorts of stuff, and it's day in and day out dirty. And some of it, actually, I bet if you investigated some of it might get into legal gray zones. But it's common. The Clintons had all sorts of stuff like this. Any number of people have stuff like this, and it's, I think it generally absolutely disgusts people. And then in the Trump, Alex Jones world, then it becomes like, well, he fired this prosecutor, and all of these stories that, again, these are 30-minute debunkable. Like, if you want to listen, there's a 19-page piece that Robert Mackey wrote in The Intercept. It's just not true.
Right.
All the stuff about but the broader truth of this kid's on the energy board in Ukraine.
Right.
Disgusting.
Right. Now, that is a distinct question as to whether, and I've said this about Hillary Clinton too, there was a lot of things that were about Hillary Clinton that were handicapped to her as a candidate that were not her fault. Part of it was that there was a huge, a huge cottage industry that existed for multiple decades that made a lot of people made a lot of money off of creating accusations against the Clintons. I think it is, fairly or unfairly, a liability for Joe Biden. Now, people can decide like, well, I don't care if it's a liability. It shouldn't be. And therefore, I will not impact my support for him. But this is one of the dangers of having your primary sort of like a reason for your candidacy be that I can win, that there's a lot less like, there's not a lot of Joe Biden people out there going like, well, even if he can't win, I'm going to support him. Or even if it's not a slam dunk, I'm going to support him because I really, really want,
it's about
less
changing the nature of American politics.
I want less ambitious policies. And therefore, I'm going to continue to support him. I think it's a liability. Do I think it's a huge liability? I don't know, because I don't, I'm not a Biden supporter, but I would imagine if I'm thinking I want to vote for Joe Biden because I think he's a slam dunk to win, that the fact that they were able to create, there was enough building blocks for them to build this narrative or to continue it on is I think a liability. I mean,
definitely, of course, it's a liability, and I mean, yeah, and it allows Trump. Because in some ways, Trump speaks more honestly about capitalism than any other politician in America. Because he will say occasionally, he atmospherically and generally, and then mixed with a healthy dose of lies, but some instinctive truths. He knows how to, it's like you say all the time. Oh, really, Joe? Back to normalcy? Like right. Your son working for the Ukrainians without any qualifications? I don't want that kind of normal.
Right.
Don't like it.
I mean, this is the problem. He's running, Biden is running on this notion of I am morally superior to Donald Trump, and I will return this country to a morally superior place. I will make America morally great again. And these type of things, and part of it is also, and I think, Warren has some susceptibility to this. And, I guess, like this is why they trotted out the, Bernie in Russia with his shirt taken off. Like there are subtextual narratives that get built. And if there are real world events that can be understood through that context, it becomes a liability. Do I think this is going to sink his candidacy? No, I think that hopefully other things will. But
after watching Rudy, we got to, I think, admit, though, that Biden actually looks in incredible mental and cognitive form.
Right. It's true. Rudy Giuliani's a plant.
Yeah. That was Biden's best moment. Biden did have these moments, if you have any kind of political theater enjoyment in you. And his burn on Rudy Giuliani back in the day was actually really great. Do you remember that?
What was it?
Rudy Giuliani was running for president on, I mean, actually really just like the most craven exploitation of 9/11 ever. And they were talking to Biden, and again, and it's actually funny when you watch these clips, you can, I mean, objectively really see the decline here. And Biden's, he's walking and he's enjoying being Joe Biden. He's sipping a cup of coffee and holding court, whatever. And he goes, and he's like, I've known Rudy for a long time. He's a nice guy, the classic thing. And he's like, all he ever says is a noun, a verb, and 9/11.
Oh, yeah. That wasn't his formulation, though.
It wasn't? Someone gave it to him?
Oh, God. It was all over.
Well, he delivered it well.
Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah. Calling from a 203 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? And people, it's hard for people to appreciate that right now, but literally that's all he did. It was every answer to any question was always about 9/11. Calling from a 203 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey there. This is Rob from Brantford, Connecticut.
Rob from Brantford, Connecticut.
Yep.
Welcome to the program, Rob.
Exactly. Hey, thank you so much for answering my call. This is really wicked. Thank you. So the first thing I wanted to mention in terms of marijuana laws and banking, in Massachusetts where you can buy it recreationally, there are some places that will let you use debit cards, but it runs as an ATM fee, and I don't know how that works, but I think they can circumvent the system that way. So, and then the other thing I wanted to mention was just kind of riffing off of how Bernie supporters can speak to people like Yang supporters and Warren supporters. In my opinion, they're kind of the most like set in their ways that I can find on the people on the left. And I just want to kind of talk to you guys about ways that I can kind of navigate those conversations.
Okay. Oh, wait. So you want to know how you talk to Yang and Bernie and who supporters?
Yeah, because I'm a big Bernie guy, and I just find speaking to people who are like Yang supporters and Warren supporters, it's hard to, because I try to convey, it's not like I disagree with those individuals. Like I really like a lot of their policies. I think Andrew Yang's cool, and I think like he would make an interesting Secretary of Labor. But like, I just want to understand like ways that I can approach those individuals that's not off-putting for them and makes me seem overly confrontational.
Oh, my Bernie bro is steaming right. Not Secretary of Labor, maybe Chief Futurist or something. Maybe
Imagineer.
Imagineer. That's maybe Chief Creative Thinking Advisor with no power.
Well, the only thing, the only, I think the best approach is in my mind, in terms of selling Bernie, is that Bernie has had an extended commitment to these issues. And it's going to take someone who is relentless in their relationship to those issues to withstand the onslaught of what is going to come at them if they try and implement it.
Yeah, definitely. And the last thing I wanted to mention too was I was listening to Michael Brooks somewhere else on something else. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And you were speaking about how Bernie is always coming out in favor, being like, Warren's a long friend of mine, and then she's kind of riffing off of that as well, and how it's kind of time for her to step up and call out the media when in the articles that are written glorifying her, that they also denounced Bernie with these strange lies. It's time for her to kind of disagree with those and actually prove that, she's there for him, especially after kind of hedging her bets in 2016.
I think that if there's going to be kind of some people's really want, I guess what I'm trying to say, and I'm, clearly I have my, and it's different because I'm not in the campaign, but I think if Sanders and Warren, basically the campaign should reflect what they're both saying, essentially. And I think up until the last couple of days, the Sanders campaign has. Now it's becoming like they're both in the mix. But I think there was a long period of time where, there's glowing coverage of Warren, and then there would be a lot of articles taking place in the context of kind of trashing Sanders. And I think it would have been if you wanted to keep that kind of community up, just even one statement like, hey, you know, backing me, embracing my agenda is not predicated on lying about or trashing Senator Sanders. He's my friend. And I think that that should be put in the mix. Yes.
Appreciate the call.
Yeah, thank you.
Andrew Yang, not Secretary of Labor, though. I'm a little caught on that one.
I still think we should always be respectful with our left liberal comrades when we're talking about Warren.
Yes,
Sanders.
you got your points yesterday.
I agree.
You
calling
did
from a
your
978 area code.
Your
Who's this? Where you
middle-aged
calling
Patreon
from?
reach out yesterday.
978 area code. Who's this? Where you calling from? 978 978 978. Good day. We got time for one or two more. Calling from a 215 area code. Who's this? Where you calling from?
Hey, Sam. How you doing?
Good. How you doing? Who is this?
I'm doing great, thank you. This is Drew calling from Raleigh, North Carolina.
Drew from Raleigh, North Carolina. Go ahead.
Yeah. I just had two things very, very briefly. I'm a pretty new listener. I started listening because of the Michael Tracy interview, so thanks to that guy being a schmuck, you're getting my $10 a month.
I love it. Gosh, let me just do this for Michael. It's Rosh Hashanah. I will look back on how I raised my voice with him and ask for forgiveness during this the period of atonement. But go ahead.
All right, Sam. So I just, it's a Friday, casual day. I just wanted to kind of take you to task because of all the songs by The Clash. You choose Pressure Down. The song about the weather.
Pressure Drop.
Pressure Drop. I'm sorry.
Well, it's a Peter. It's a Peter
Maytall song about the weather.
It's a yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, I know what you're saying. I mean, obviously they have a lot more political songs. Sandinista was an entire album dedicated to the proceeds to the Sandinistas. There's yes, they're a much more political band, but it was an old. What happened is it was a radio thing, and it really, when you're doing radio, it really just comes down to I needed something with a driving beat.
I gotcha. Well, look, I love what y'all do. I listen to all your podcasts, and just have a great weekend.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
That was very
Fair
nice.
enough. See, there's civility in 2019.
Super civility.
Check out our episode with Spencer Rapone where we talk about all of our favorite Clash albums.
Calling from a 717 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 717.
Hey, Sam. This is Chris calling from Sheepshead Bay.
Chris from Sheepshead Bay. How are you?
Not too bad. I called yesterday and talked to Michael and Jamie, so that was pretty cool.
Oh.
Well,
now
I'm
big upgrade.
What's that?
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
How's the letdown feel?
So
anticlimactic.
So I'm calling about the impeachment inquiry, and I'm kind of like in the middle of I don't know, like I kind of tweeted at Nomiki Konst about how it's like this unstoppable force of stupidity versus an unmovable object of stupidity between Donald Trump and the Democratic Party.
Yes.
Or Democratic leadership.
Who is the unmovable? Who's the unstoppable force and who's the unmovable?
It doesn't really matter because, but at the end of the day, they're both the stupid ones that are kind of going at each other.
Right.
Like the very first day it was announced, you had Donald Trump saying, "Hey, maybe you should talk to Mike Pence about his phone calls," and Rudy Giuliani's like, "Oh, well, the State Department had me make this phone call." These guys are so slimy and ratty that with a little bit of pressure, you could probably have them all turning on each other within.
I don't know if you could. I don't know if you could get them all to turn on each other, but what you could do is you could expose them. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, look, we dedicated the whole show today to talking about how just utterly rudderless you have to be approaching impeachment this way. The idea, I almost think it's worse, frankly, to do impeachment quickly than not at all, because you're not even like, you don't even have the threat of impeachment hanging out there anymore. It's stunning to me. It just seems to be so divorced. Now, I guess to a certain extent, let me rephrase that. I do think it's important that he be impeached. I think he should be impeached by a whole host of things, though, because the idea is, you need some accountability. But I guess you're providing some accountability and you're checking that box. But from a political standpoint, I think it's probably worse.
I mean, obviously, arguments on Twitter are somewhat pointless. I'm dealing with arguments on Twitter get kind of pointless because
how
everyone's
dare
kind of
you,
shouting at each
sir?
other.
How dare you?
I know. I'm denying the masses, the proletariats on Twitter.
Well, you're denying me as well.
This is not being
some
bagged.
of them they want to get into this whole thing about it's nothing but political. That's just what it is. The impeachment, talking about getting rid of the president of the United States, is just inherently political. Kind of grow up about it. A decade or two ago, it was about getting rid of a guy for getting an extramarital blowjob. Okay, now we have something more credible, and we have to worry about it being too political.
Yeah.
You have to hold them accountable.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. I think that's the explanation why we would just impeach him on one thing and get going and clicked off that box. We held him to account and blah, blah, blah. But there's also, it's a political process, and they're a political party, and it should be political. But appreciate the phone call. All right, folks, look, here's what we're going to do. If you've been hanging on the phone for more than 20 minutes, which is not most of you, I can see, I'm going to take 30 seconds. So we got about 4 or 5 of you. So if you got to be honest with yourself because you're going to hang on for longer than you should. We're going to do it 30 seconds, and that's it. Calling from a 330 area code. Who's this? Where you calling from? You got 30 seconds. Go.
Hello, this is Nick from Canton, Ohio. How's it going?
Good.
Okay, so I'll be real quick with this. I think that there can definitely be a huge case made that there are going to be there are huge crimes being committed in terms of the environmental degradation that's being committed by the Trump administration in terms of not enforcing existing environmental laws. So could an environmental case be made to also impeach Trump, to add it to all the other reasons?
It could, but, there are legal processes which would hold the EPA to account if that was the case. But I suppose you could say that. But I think you could. Look, you can put whatever you want in those things and people vote on it. It's a political process. I just don't think that we're in a political space where people would do that. But I appreciate the call.
I think there's even more of a case that he's violating international human rights law with putting kids in cages.
I think that's true, too. Calling from a 240 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Got 30 seconds. Go.
Hey, Sam. It's Vito from Maryland.
Vito, go.
So it occurs to me, just want to make a quick observation and get your take on it. And that is, I think Bernie really needs to expand the electorate, not just in the event that he's the nominee, but I think he has to expand the Democratic primary electorate in order to win. I don't think the typical Democratic primary voter that he can win just with those people. I think he's going to have to find a way to expand that electorate as well. What do you think about that?
I think that's a good point. Appreciate the call. I think look, we just saw in New York State, the Bernie people were essential in getting New York State to reform when it was going to have its final date for registration, moved it from October 10th or 11th in this year to February, I think 12th or 14th next year. That's an extra 4 or 5 months. And so in terms of expanding that electorate, that's where you see that. And I think to a certain extent, that's a big part. That's a mechanical part. From a rhetorical standpoint, I think just talking about broad ideas and broad principles. And frankly, I keep waiting for, you can't train a pigeon to go fly on it. But if people remember in 2016, when that dove flew onto Bernie's like shoulder or something. I can't remember
The bird on his
the podium. Yeah. Like there was an energy there that I think would be very helpful right now.
That's a fucking good point.
Thank you.
Release the birds.
Release the birds. Call from an 863 area code. 863 area code. Yeah.
Sam?
Yeah.
Hey, it's Jill from Lakeland.
Jill from Lakeland. You got 30 seconds, Jill. Go.
Hey, okay. So two things. I called you before to ask for advice between two jobs, and one was a quote-unquote green job. I did want to let you guys know that I got it.
Oh, good.
So, yay.
That's great.
All right. Second, another huge win. I was able to get both of my grandparents and my aunt to firmly state their support for Bernie Sanders switching from Biden.
So nice.
Yeah.
Well
Good
done.
job.
Crushing it.
That's huge.
Yay.
Appreciate the call, Jill. You get one of these.
Yep.
Thanks for the call.
Just make sure you do it well and you do it with passion.
The voodoo curse is wearing off. Brendan crushing it.
Call from an 862 area code. Who's this? Where are you
focus on
calling
this
from?
now.
862.
Word.
Hi, this is Walker. I'm in Bed-Stuy.
Hey, Walker.
I guess I'll call. Thank you. I'm gonna call back probably sometime next week about really what I wanted to talk about. But I have to say, after I just spent so much time binging all of the Not Even a Show episodes, and I'm utterly convinced that Greg was some three-dimensional Chris James type figure. That is my takeaway.
Fascinating.
I'll call Greg.
Wow, fascinating theory. Appreciate the call. Call back. Calling from a 614 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, it's Daniel from Melbourne, Australia.
Hello, Daniel.
I did want to take a little bit more time.
Sorry.
I did want to take a little bit more time to set this up because it's a bit delicate, but I guess I'll top line it. I had a really troubling exchange with Ben Burgess the other week where I leveled some criticism at him for a take on his Patreon. We went about 20 replies back and forth, and then he deleted the whole thread and banned me from his Patreon. I've been, if you'll allow me to just clarify, I've been in the Brooksy TMBS Discord for a while, and I ran it by pretty much everyone there, and everyone was like shocked at what he did.
You know, okay.
You should mention. Yeah, you should message me. Maybe we could talk about it.
Yeah, this
What
is.
was the take? I mean, this is actually the first that I've heard of this, and we've had Ben on our show.
All right.
No,
well,
this is not for this.
So
we should talk
narrow.
About it. Yeah.
You're talking about an
That's why I wanted to take more time to set this up because there is a broader point. And
well, I'm sorry. Now is not the time to do it. I mean, you can send an email at Majority Reporters if you want. But I mean, I can't think of anything that is more off point than an argument you have with someone I don't know that you brought up on Michael's Discord.
Yeah, George Stephanopoulos. I got a big problem with Mickey Mouse. He's being really mean to me.
Calling from an 813 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. It's Tony from Tampa.
Tony from Tampa. You got 30 seconds. Go.
All right, so my question's too long for that, so I wanted to pimp a show that is really good, like a leftist show for people to watch.
Okay.
It's called The Michael Brooks Show. People should subscribe to the Patreon. Just thought it was really good.
Oh, thanks.
I'm sorry.
I've been hearing about that show
Very
a
hard
lot.
to hear you. Very hard to hear you. Calling
Why
from
would you
a
take any calls after that?
773 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, I think that's me.
Yeah. Got 30 seconds. Go.
All right, I'm Malcolm from Chicago. So I wanted to bring up something within this whole impeachment debate that's raging that no one's talking about. It's not just a question of political capital. This impeachment has to happen because Trump was contacting Ukraine for political reasons, right? It's like if you don't impeach him, you're throwing the election in a sense because you're telling him that he can go further and further in his efforts to bring in, whatever sort of resources that his presidency allows him to bring in to thwart whichever candidate we eventually put up. So people are talking about, oh, is it smart to impeach? What is it going to do for the base? Like, no, this is almost purely defensive tactic on the part of the Democratic Party. You have to do something, but you have to challenge him on this. So I want people to bear that in mind. Nobody's talking about that.
All right. Well, let me just say, I think that is a good point. You are sending a marker, not just for him. It's because he's going to get away with it. But you're sending a marker for others that this is illicit. And if we catch you down the road interfering in this election, whether you're Ukraine or whether you're someone who's helping solicit, then there's going to be repercussions. Yeah. I mean, it was, the idea like, oh, he's going to impeach himself when we vote him out. Well, not if he's working on rigging the election in some fashion. Calling from a 518 area code. Who's this? You got 30 seconds. We have 2 more callers. 518, 518, 518, 518. Good day. Calling from a 347 area code. 347. Who's this? 30 seconds.
Yeah, Sam. It's Sam from New York. We're both Sams,
Yeah,
and I love you very much, Sam.
You got 40 seconds there.
You know this.
Yeah.
Me and you, we're close. But I'm very, very disappointed.
Ooh.
Where are the Crowder files? I know you have a Jewish holiday coming up.
It's true.
But there's some talk in the chat. People are saying that you are Seder the misleader because you did not bring them up today. I've been waiting all day for these. Please, we need those Crowder tapes.
I am Seder the Misslower, and I will drop them next Wednesday. Sam to Sam. I'm giving you a Sam to Sam promise next Wednesday, buddy.
You have a wonderful day, bro, and I'll see you again soon.
And the final call of the week. Calling from a 914 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, Sam. It's me, Grimlock.
Oh, okay. What's up? You got 30 seconds. Go.
First of all, I just want to tell everyone to tune into the Bad Praxis Pod, hosted by your one and only moderator, Kennedy Crouch.
Okay. You got 20.
Also, I'd like to note that, among the many things we could blame Emma Vigeland for, she did not defend J20 resistance.
Dude,
then again, the only person at TYT who did was Hassan Piker.
Okay, that's 30 seconds. What a waste.
What an incredible waste of time. Wait, really quick. Shouts to the more than 83,000 SAU coalition workers who achieved a tentative agreement for better working conditions for them and patients with Kaiser Permanente today, and won't, in fact,
they
be
were
striking.
threatening 80,000 Kaiser Permanente workers were threatening to strike in about 2 weeks from now. All right, everybody. Sorry we couldn't get to more calls. Appreciate your calling in. We will see you. We will have a couple of, we'll have live shows on Monday and Tuesday. I will be back on Wednesday. For those of you who are Jewish, Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Happy Rosh Hashanah. See you in, I don't even know what the year it is. Like 50, I don't know what it is now. I remember when it was 5083. I don't know what somebody look it up quick.
Jews.
1 million. It's year 1 million.
Oh my God.
I don't know.
Nobody. Yeah, I know, but I just presumed you guys would be able to operate a. Yeah.
It is. I don't know.
5780. See you then.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. Guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes?